Hello everybody and welcome to This Nintendo Life, episode 288. My name is NBZ and I have had the spiciest butthole that there has ever been. And you know, I know it's crude to open an episode like that, but if for any reason I disappear in the middle of the show, you'll know why. I'll have to go to the toilet and Bally will have to do it all on his own. Hi Bally, how are you feeling about the prospect of having to carry it? No, well, how are you? But also, how are you feeling about the prospect of having to carry a show as I go and take another dump? You know.
I have awkwardly carried shows in the past on occasion, and I think I'm getting better at it. But it is still quite hard.
Yeah.
Ironically, some of Caroline's family are here, and as we're recording, they're ordering Indian. So,
oh no!
I'm gonna reheat some Indian after we've recorded and eat that. But probably, I tolerate spice at the other end a lot better than you do.
Yeah.
But I'm very interested to know, what is your thought process when you are confronted with spicy food? Do you say, does your head go, oh, it looks really nice and I'm sure it will be fine? Or is it, well, this is going to be bad later, I'm just going to have it now and endure it? Or is it just kind of somewhere in between?
It depends on the day of the week, okay? So if I'm going to the office, so my schedule of going to the toilet, great conversation we'll get into at the start of this episode. So my schedule is that if I'm going to the office the next day, I have to get up earlier than usual, and also I have to be on a schedule to shower and.
But going to the loo takes like 10 minutes, MBZ. Why do you have to get up earlier than normal?
Okay, so it takes me longer than the regular person, okay, to go to the toilet. You know, it's just a whole thing.
I think long-term listeners know this.
They do, yeah.
In their deep brain archives.
Of course,
it's not been said in a while.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, so usually it takes me between 30 and 40 minutes. Yes, okay, calm down. Okay, I'm not going to die.
This is why he's into JRPGs, by the way, people. This is how he does them.
That's how I get through them. Ironically, I was watching a Xenoblade playthrough right now while I was on the toilet. So you are like hitting me with a nail on the head. Yeah, so basically it depends on the day. So if it's a work day and I know I'm going to have to get up early and I don't want it to be impinged, you know, I don't want my regular schedule to be thrown off and arrive late, then I will deliberately not eat something spicy. Today being a Saturday, I was like, that's fine, Sunday tomorrow, I can eat all the spicy food I want because there's no consequences. I just will go to the toilet whenever. I have freedom here. Me forgetting that, you know, I have to record this podcast at a certain time and my stomach decided just like right before this, it was like, I'm going to make you go to the toilet now. And I was like, well, that's not good. So I messaged Bally being like, yep, it's coming. I'm going to have to delay our recording. So that's why we're in this situation.
Only 15 minutes. It was all good.
That's quick for me. I was like, honestly, I was like trying to race to get to 15 minutes so that it would all work out. But anyway, it's all worked out in the end.
Yeah.
But yes, I think that if we combined your ability to stomach it with my ability to eat it, because I don't have any problem with spice at the front end, right? The front end, I can shove it in my mouth, no problem. It's going to burn me a little bit, but I'm like, yeah, I like it. I enjoy the flavor. Yeah. It's just my body cannot process it for some goddamn reason.
I am like 10 times better at the top end than I used to be. So
that's good. Yeah, you've built up a tolerance.
Did you hear that doorbell?
I did hear something in the background. I thought it was a door slightly opening.
That was the doorbell. Yeah, that is the Indian here, so everyone's going to go have it. So.
Very good. Lovely. Okay. Well, it's arrived just in time for us to stop talking about any of that disgusting stuff and start talking about some delicious video games. Bally, what's today's show going to be all about?
So for the first segment, we're going to talk about the Game Trade games that we played in 2024. For those who don't know, Game Trade is when MZ and myself give each other a game that we have not played. Sorry, a game that we have played, but the other person has not played, and they have to play that game in the year of 2024. We'll get to that in a minute. And then for the second segment, it is time for our predictions for 2025, all on Nintendo predictions. So obviously we've had the little Nintendo Switch 2 reveal, so I'm sure it'll kind of be the focus of our predictions, but we'll get to that in the second segment. And then to close out the show, we're going to discuss our Game Trade games for 2025.
Exactly, yes. So we will start the cycle anew. Don't know why it always turns out like this, but we always, like, for some reason, both of us, like, wait until the end of the year to play the Game Trade game, and then, like...
Well, like, Bally Chew was born, and I was like, damn, I've not played Danganronpa. I need to. This is like a 30-hour game.
I was worried for you, honestly, at that point. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to make it. But
it was actually, I'll talk about it in a minute.
Yeah.
It was a good game to play with.
It worked out, it turns out. So that's good. Lovely. Well, yes, we'll be talking about all that stuff. But let's get into the video games that we have been playing. There's actually a lot of stuff we've been playing because there's been a break, obviously, over Christmas. And there's also, obviously, the last few shows have been Game of the Year focused, so we haven't actually been talking about what we've been playing. So I have a bit of a backlog, so if we ever need extra video games for me to talk about, I can dip into that and start discussing them. But let's talk about the Game Trade games that we were assigned. So Bally, you gave me a game called Untitled Goose Game.
We should also say at the front, like, one problem I think with the Game Trade is that there are far more games on Nintendo platforms I've not played that MBZ has played.
Yes.
Versus the other way around. So that's maybe something to... I think we're fine for this year. I'm confident in my pick, but it's maybe something to think about for the future. But we'll get there.
It definitely is. I think the problem I'm having with Game Trade is I'm like, oh, Bally's got to play this. And I look at it and I'm like... That's a non-Nintendo thing, and I'm like, it's annoying because obviously it's a constraint we give ourselves for the show itself. But there's lots of games that I'm like, fucking, you gotta play fucking Titanfall 2, Val. You gotta play Titanfall 2. You know, like there's these games out there that I'm like, you gotta play this.
We can do Nintendo year one year, but I'm happy with my Nintendo one for this year. If you want to stick with it,
we'll see. Yes, you gave me Untitled Goose Game.
Yes,
a video game that it came out, 2019, I want to say?
Yeah,
and did quite well for itself. I think it definitely broke through into the mainstream. A lot of people were into it, and I believe you played it on Switch a few years ago, right?
Yeah, I played it with Caroline. It was a very fun game to kind of play together and be like kind of just working out what to do next. Oh, that's kind of work out how to get there and do this. And it was kind of a fun... It's kind of a puzzle game with basically some funny bits in there that we enjoyed the kind of 5-6 hours of it. It was good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it won the DICE Award for Game of the Year, I believe, which is very, very cool.
I should also say, I think it was my number 7 game that year.
Oh, okay. That's good context. Yeah. Very good. So, yeah, it's interesting. So I was interested to see what this game was like, how it would hold up. I did pick it up on Switch. I played the Switch version, which does generally hold up pretty well. I would say it's obviously it's like 30 FPS, and so it's a little bit less smooth than it would be on other modern platforms, but I think it plays just well enough, and I think animation wise it's quite strong, and so I think that carries it quite a lot. I'd say that's one of the strongest suits of this game is its animation quality of like the goose, the way it moves around, the way that it kind of interacts with things, and you have various kind of ability. I would say like you can move your like neck down to the ground to like pick up things on the ground, and I think that kind of level of control is interesting because you can get into some nuanced stuff of like grabbing a carrot out of the ground, right, versus something that's up on a gardener's keys on his waist, stuff like that, right? So you can kind of differentiate between like levels of things you want to interact with, and yeah, generally like when you transition from walking into swimming on a river, or you getting your wings up in the air to like flap against everybody, all that stuff is quite good. And I think it's interesting because a lot of the people in this world are non-distinct, really. They are people shaped, but they don't really have eyes or noses or mouth. They're just like kind of like round blank faces essentially, which is interesting because I guess it gives the goose more personality than the people, which makes sense in a game where the goose is kind of the focus, right?
Yeah.
And the essential idea is that you're running around as this goose, picking things up, causing a bit of chaos, and it is driven by a system, basically like a notebook essentially, that says, it gives you a bunch of tasks, and it plops you into an area. So the first area is this gardener has his little garden, and the gate is shut, and around it there's a few different things. There's a picnic kind of like rug in an area, there's a bit of a river, and you basically have to figure out, how do I get into this place, how do I steal stuff from this gardener, and how do I kind of achieve all the things on this list, right? And I think part of my initial... So I first started playing this in LA last year at the airport. So I was sitting with everybody waiting for the plane, and I booted up Untitled Goose Game because I was like, fuck, I've only got a few days left of the year to finish this. I should probably start this. So I started it. I'm sitting next to Patrick, and I'm just playing. I'm walking around and like doing this stuff, and he looks at me, he looks at my face, and he's like, you look very unimpressed. Like, clearly on my face, I was just like, I just had this
I have
mood
been
of
made
like,
to play this game.
I was like tutting at it. I was like, oh, you know, and he was like, well, this is the face of a man who's not enjoying himself playing this video game, which is very, very amusing. I think, so something that I found annoying at the beginning and what made me turn it off initially was I was going and getting the pumpkin and getting the carrot and getting all this stuff. So basically one of the tasks at the beginning is to put all these different objects onto a picnic rug.
Right.
And so I was doing that. And then the gardener would come after me and he'd pick them up and take them back again. Yes. And I was like, for fuck's sake, this is really annoying. And so I was getting frustrated with it. I basically turned it off and went on the plane and then didn't play it for a few days. And then I got back home, obviously, had Christmas, all that good stuff, a couple of weeks later. And now I only have like 5 days at the end of the year. And I'm like, right, I gotta do this. I'm gonna.
Bally has beaten Danganronpa, but I need to do this.
Exactly. He's done his job. I need to do my job. And so, you know, I was playing Final Fantasy Shadowbringers, and I think I finished Shadowbringers, and I was like, I didn't finish Shadowbringers yet because I finished Shadowbringers the start of January. So I hadn't actually finished that, but I was like, I want to be sitting there playing more Final Fantasy and just kind of grinding through. And I was like, no, I have to make a decision here to play Untitled Goose Game. So in one afternoon, I basically sat down and I just played the rest of it all the way through. And it didn't actually take that long. Like looking at how long to beat, I believe it's 2 hours is how long to beat it has. Right. Yeah, it's really, really short.
I don't think you have to do all the tasks to get to the next area.
Correct. Yes. So you can do everything but one task essentially. So okay. You can do all the ones on the list, and if there's one you can't figure out, like in the second area there was a task to break the broom, and I never figured out how to do that, and I still don't know how to do it, and it was fine because I was able to move on without doing that specific task, right? So yeah, I think I eventually got through that first area, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, now what's going on? And it's essentially broken up into 4 main sections, right? There's that opening with the gardener. There's a section outside, which gave me big Thank Goodness You're Here vibes, which is like there's a little outside store.
I felt that while playing Thank Goodness You're Here. Like, this is kind of like Untitled Goose Game, just maybe a little bit simpler and...
I guess like British countryside or Middle English towns are quite weirdly iconic.
But interestingly, the devs for Untitled Goose Game are Australian.
Right.
So
which
it's
is
like,
weird.
I don't know enough about Australia to understand what are like the British stereotypes in Australia.
Right. What did colonialism bring to them, you know, and how did that impact?
Right. And there's definitely like an English country garden. There's a pub. There's like cricket bats and things. Obviously, the Aussies bloody love a bit of cricket as well.
Exactly.
But like there's these things that you just kind of think, oh, it's kind of like an Australian take on a British or an English town in this case.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe that is the case. Maybe there's a bit of Aussie in there, but yeah, I think from a weather mood perspective, it felt quite drab British kind of like vibe.
Not Australian.
From a color palette. So that's kind of why I felt like it was that more so. But yeah, definitely, I think Thank Goodness You're Here. And I think I mentioned this on the last episode on our Game of the Year one, when we were talking about Thank Goodness You're Here, is I feel like I just don't really connect with these types of games that are, you know, they are kind of like exploration-y, puzzly in some ways, and there's not a lot of clear direction on what exactly you have to do. And I would say,
is a game like Little Kitty Big City more open worldy and you enjoyed that more? Or
no, I think it fits in the same kind of vein for me.
Okay.
Which is like there's a bit of exploration needed, and sometimes it's not as clear as I would maybe like it to be, of like what do I need to do here necessarily. But you know, I think it's a different tolerance thing, right? And I think that's for me, these types of games just don't really work because, like I said, they don't really have a strong narrative through line, and they're also quite weak mechanically in terms of...
I was going to say, like, when I remember you mentioned something about, it didn't really jive with you, and then the more I'm playing a game like Dredge, for example, I'm like, would MEZ like this? And I kind of have categorized you into 2 kind of pots.
Sure, yeah.
See what you think. But either a game has to be very, very narrative driven and have a strong narrative. Look at a game like Danganronpa that I'm about to talk about.
Exactly.
Or it has to have mechanics that feel damn good.
Right.
And there's tons of games that are in between these 2 extremes that I feel you're much more... lukewarm on is an exaggeration, but there's lots of games in between. I think a game like Dredge is kind of in between, where there's a lot of narrative going on, but the primary things you're doing are not necessarily narrative focused. So I kind of see that if a game fit to be in your top 10 of all time has to be nailing in at least one of those two things, and arguably your favorite game of all time probably does a little bit of both, although those games are probably very few and far between.
Yes, I think that's a good assessment. Like, I'm a man of extremes, right? Like, either it's all narrative or it's all gameplay, and the in-between is where games are weaker for me, generally, I think, because they don't directly go, like, strongly in either direction. I think, you know, games with loops like Stardew are a weird example like that, where I am very into those, but I think it is...
although it's not like action mechanics, it's still... strong mechanically.
Exactly,
it's the systems mechanics rather than the jumpy move around mechanics.
Exactly. As long as the systems are deep and rich and something where I can feel myself kind of falling into, I think that is definitely a strong talent. And I think that explains very clearly why the first half of Dave the Diver works for me and why the second half doesn't. Because the second half focuses on a narrative that I don't think is actually very good. You know, like it's storytelling. There's words coming out of people's mouths, but I don't really care about any of them, and that becomes the focus as opposed to the shut up and let me fish, right? Which is the first half of the game. So I think that is very on the money. I think you've done a good psychoanalysis of my game taste there, Bally. So yeah, I think that said, I think it's quite clear why a game like Untitled Goose Game doesn't work for me, because it's not really honing in on either of those kind of extremes, right? And I think the thing with the puzzles is there's a bit of experimentation with it, right? And it's like, okay, this kid... You need to get this kid to wear a different pair of glasses. And I'm like, what do I have to do? Like, I'm just thinking, and I think part of the puzzle here is just like trying to interact with lots of different things, seeing what happens.
It's like experimentation and then linking those things together, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I just found myself not wanting to do that. And what happened is I had a YouTube walkthrough up on a computer screen in front of me while I was playing on my Switch. And I'd get to an area, I'd walk around for maybe 5 minutes, and I'd just be like, well, I don't know what to do. So I'd go to the YouTube video and look up what to do, and then I'd do it. And that kind of happened for a lot of this game, for a lot of the back half of it. There was even a part at the end where you have to get this bucket on a man's head. And I was looking, I was like, that guy's over there. I brought him over there, but then I can't hit him with the bucket because he's not close enough. Not realizing that there's a specific thing you have to do, which is to like take a tomato outside, get him to pick it up, and then put it on top of him. And like, I was getting quite frustrated because I was like, I can't, there's not enough time for my goose to get around here and knock on his head because he leaves. And yeah, there's a bit of frustration there.
I do think I think playing it with Caroline was quite good for that, where we didn't get as bored and frustrated because Caroline would be like, try doing this, try doing that. And our brains just think in very different ways when it comes to puzzle solving and bringing those things together. It's quite a good game to kind of play with more than one person to kind of pitch in what they think might be the case, especially because it's so, there's no words, it's just like you go and try and do a thing and then you try and do another thing, and it's a very visual thing that anyone in the room watching it can relate to and understand, oh well, actually maybe you put the broom here, for example. Yes,
yeah, absolutely. So I think that is a good, like, if you are bouncing ideas off someone, I think this is the case with puzzle games generally. Like, there is a fun co-op nature to puzzle games of like, you can bounce ideas off of somebody and you can probably get to solutions, and the fun is in the discussion, as opposed to like if you're one person sitting there and you have one train of thought. You know, like, you can quickly bang your head against the wall and be like, I don't know what to do, and kind of give up. And so like, yeah, with the kid, I was like, okay, I'm going to bring the glasses over to him. How do I get him to pay attention? He's not... I was like, can I switch out his... I was like, okay, his paper plane or his airplane is on the bench, so I'm going to swap out the plane for the glasses, and maybe he picks those up instead, because his routine as he's walking around is like, I'm picking up the plane, and then I'm going around, and I put the plane back down. I was like, okay, this is his loop. This is what makes sense, right? No, you have to notice that his shoes are interactable, and you could undo his shoelaces, which makes him lean down, and then you can take the glasses off of his head and then swap them out with those. And I just feel like the kind of puzzles in this game are puzzles where the lead up to them are not taught to the player. There's no escalation of like, we previously taught you this puzzle idea, therefore it leads to this solution. It's very one-off solutions to puzzles, and I think because it's a little more kind of curated in that way, thinking of what the solution is difficult because the possibility space is quite wide, right? So that's why I think generally I found frustration, and I was like, I'm just going to look it up, right? For example, how do I get this this bow on this duck? Well, the solution is there's a statue of a duck, or a goose, statue of a goose. You move that goose statue out of the way, and then your goose will stand there and pretend to be it. And I'm like, I don't know that I would have thought that would be the case, right? Like, I don't know that that's a possibility, that my goose can stand there and stay still and await for a bow to be put on it, right? That's the kind of like one-off puzzle. It only happens in that scenario, and there's no lead up to it. There's nothing previously in the game to teach me that that's a thing that I can do.
Yeah.
And therefore the puzzle to me feels a little bit harder to deduce because I don't have context for what I should be doing to get it there. There's a clue to be like, get this on you, but I don't know what the possibility space is for me to get it on me in the first place, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. It's interesting if you compare it to something like a Cocoon, where Goose Game is clearly designed where you're meant to be poking around constantly, and Cocoon is designed in a way where you can kind of poke around, but ultimately you can kind of work out what you can stop and think more than just running around the world and trying different things. You can actually kind of work out, oh, actually, yes, this is how that happens. Whereas Untitled Goose Game is more, right, I've got all these mechanics, I've got this little area I'm in, and I'm just going to poke and prod until something kind of breaks or changes and I can progress this task. And it's just a very, like, it's frustrating, but I see why they did it, because it's how they want you to do funny poking around things as the goose, and how the way they get you to do that is by making it very unclear what to do next.
Yeah, I think their priority was really, what is the comedic solution here, right? Like, how do we provide something a little funny that also is a puzzle scenario, right? Like, how can we be a bit cute here? Oh, how do we make these things break? There's a guy on one side of the fence and a woman on the other, and if you bring something over, he tosses it back over the other side. Well, if you grab a bunch of stuff from the other side that is breakable and put it on his side, he will throw it back over because it's not his, and in throwing it over the fence, it will break because he's thrown it and it's broken. The issue again with that, though, is like the other things that he has to throw over, none of those break, only the specific ones that have the breaking capacity to them break. But if you have an item that he just needs to put back over there, that doesn't break. So that, I think that's the kind of like the friction point that I found with Untitled Goose Game. And, you know, not to say that it's bad because it decides to go in this direction. I just think that from my personal puzzle sensibility standpoint, it just didn't jive with me. I think puzzle games, as we talked about a lot, are the genre where it is the hardest to kind of nail down, like wide group of people, right? Like everyone has the different tendencies and different ways of approaching puzzle design, and how their brains work and how they think. Like, you know, a great example of this is the fucking Gorogoa, a game that I loved and like really worked for my brain, but you did not connect with in the same way at all.
Not at all.
And I think it's just like it is the most Marmite of video game genres, because some people will love a game and some people will hate it for the exact same reason. So yeah, I think that's kind of like where I land on Untitled Goose Game. Is I think, you know, as a game mechanically, it has some interesting ideas, but I think none of them really jive with me personally, which, you know, results in me just looking up a walkthrough on how to do it, you know, instead of getting into it. I do like the end, and I do think the end is fun, the way that it kind of like ties things back to the very beginning. And there's a very Hot Fuzz kind of feeling to it. One of the most iconic moments of Hot Fuzz is like at the very end, where they're in like the little model village, and going into that little model village, I was like, wow, this game has very much the vibes of the town in Hot Fuzz, the movie, which I thought was quite cool. Yeah, definitely reminiscent of that kind of, that quaint British village vibe, which I thought was very, very cool. But yeah, Untitled Goose Game, I played it and I finished it, so there you go. It's done now. Yeah,
did you like it more than I liked Sonic Mania?
I think it's a good question, because I think you did like Sonic Mania from a game standpoint. I think it was the extra game element of it, such as the live system and the inability to like change levels, and like the kind of like
mad
archaic...
when you say it like that. You just cannot change level. It's just like what? Anyway, but yeah, exactly.
I think as a game you liked Sonic Mania more, but I think as an experience you were probably more frustrated than me.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I ended up having to quit. It was just like, this is not fun. But yeah,
for sure. So yeah, I don't know. I think every year we're going to have some hits and some misses, you know, with this, and I think that's part of the process. I like it. I'm glad I played it and finally have context.
And it was short. Bad and short is okay. Long and bad is not okay.
Yeah, that's the hardest pill to swallow, I think, for sure. So hopefully we won't run into any of those this year. But Bally, I'm very excited to hear about your thoughts on Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc.
We're going to talk some non-spoilers first, but then I think it is fitting that we do have a bit of a spoilery discussion. Well, very spoilery. All spoilers and everything.
I think it's very hard to talk about visual novels. Exactly. I went back and listened to my segment on Danganronpa.
You were spoiler-free, and I didn't really learn, because I was like, oh yeah, I'll go back and listen to what MZ had to say about Danganronpa, and I was like, yeah, well...
I didn't really say
much
anything.
Because that's the game, but yeah.
That's the game, yeah. And I think that's probably the trickiest part about it. But yeah, we'll put those in timestamps so you'll know when to skip ahead. So if you don't want to hear the spoilers, if you still haven't played Danganronpa, which I strongly recommend you do, then go away, come back later, and if not, you can skip ahead to the next segment to our predictions. But Bally? Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. We found out last episode that it came at number 4 on your list.
It did.
So yeah, let's give your initial non-spoiler thoughts on this video game.
So I really didn't know what to expect going in. I didn't look anything up on purpose. I had long forgotten what you had ever said about it on the show. It was a long time ago. I only knew that this was an introduction for me to anime.
Yeah, sure. If we're not counting the Pokemon animated series, of course.
I remember you saying it's a bit like Hunger Games.
Right, yes.
I've not actually seen or read the Hunger Games. I just know that
it's so funny to me as well.
I just know that it's basically like a last man standing kind of everyone fights each other kind of thing.
Right.
And I'll admit the whole concept of Danganronpa when it kind of unfolds is 10 times darker than I think I was expecting.
Okay.
And I think that how dark it is helps so much with the story because it really helps with the stakes of the world. And it really does feel like anything more or less can happen at any time. And that really stops the game from feeling monotonous or predictable or, oh, I think I can see where this is going. And there may be like a couple of moments in the story where I predicted correctly, but other than that, there was a lot of, right, okay, well, here we go. And I think I was concerned that I'd keep bumping into dead ends. And I don't know if this was in the original game or this remaster or whatever, but the game does a really good job of making sure you don't have to aimlessly walk around the school. And because I was really scared at the start of the game, once I worked out that right, you're in a school and different floors of this school are going to open up, I thought, oh god, by the end of this game, the school is going to be so big and there's now 70 different rooms I can go in. I'm not going to be able to find out where to go and when, but the game kind of drops hints and things and says, oh well, you have to go between one of these 2 rooms to find clues for the next case, work out who killed who, this kind of thing. And I think that the game just kept growing on me. The first case, I felt very on top of the working out who did what, finding out how it all happened. I nailed the trial. I think the second case was maybe my worst, and I had no idea what's going on, and I had to keep working it out. The third case, again, was a really hard case, but I also overcame it and felt incredibly satisfied. And then later in the game, everything just kind of... Yes, there were cases, but it's all a bit different. I don't want to spoil. And I had a really, really, really good time with this game. It worked. So I played this game more or less a week, 10 days after Bally was born. And it's one of those games where, because there's no action and it is just visual novel and there's a bit of walking around, but that's about it. And it works really well to just have my Switch on my lap and Bally's shoe kind of on one shoulder of mine, and I don't have to really move my hand or shoulder much because it's just reading things, and it worked really well, and I was able to get through it quite quickly, considering, and it was just a really, really good time. I've already downloaded the next game.
Yeah, Bally already bought the second game, so it worked.
I am open to trying like other games and things like this for sure. And yeah, I was a bit nervous at how long the game is. I think it's like between 25 and 30 hours, and I spent about 27 hours. I can't remember how long it took me, but it's a long game, but the time flew by nicely, and
it's very Moorish, right? Like, you want to know what happens. Like, they set things up in between each case quite well, and so there's always that resolution, that satisfaction. But also, because it is I think Phoenix Wright, the original, has a bit of this, which is the overarching narrative, right?
Yes.
I think like case 4 of Phoenix Wright 1 is great as like a bottle end to a overarching narrative of the first game, but a lot of Phoenix Wright games, especially the second game, have like trials that just kind of stand alone. And that's fine. I think standalone trials are great, but I think the carrot on the stick for Danganronpa more so, and why I prefer it overall to Phoenix Wright as a kind of like visual novel series, is the overall arching narrative is always present, and you're always thinking about what is the kind of whole end goal of this, right? How is this all going to resolve outside of the particulars of this individual case every time?
And I think Ace Attorney was the first Game Trade game I played, and I really enjoyed that game. I think Danganronpa, as you said, does a better job not only on making sure there's things that link to the overall narrative in every case, but on top of that, I think getting evidence and moving around gaining evidence is far more streamlined in Danganronpa than Phoenix Wright. Phoenix Wright can feel, at least Ace Attorney, what I played, felt a bit, I'm in the wrong room, and now I need to go here. And you can hit dead ends a lot more easily. There's
much more point-and-click adventure DNA in Phoenix Wright, especially that first trilogy, where a lot of the quality of life features that were in later games have not been adopted. Things like a tick when you have looked at a piece of evidence in a room and stuff like that. You know, like there's just a lot more of that stuff, where I think, like you said, Danganronpa, like it puts you in a situation and says, look at all this stuff, then we're going to move you to the next one, and you're never really stuck wondering or not knowing what to do.
There's like question marks over the areas you need to go to, and then you can systematically go through those areas, look at all the things, talk to the right people, and progress with the game in the trial, and that was good. I think that the trials in Danganronpa are really good. I think that they have maybe one or two too many mechanics, like
some weird mini game stuff going on there.
Like the game would be stronger without a couple of these. I don't feel like one of them, I can't remember, one of them's like a rhythm game, and then there's another one where
there's one where you're like, there's letters floating in circles,
like
and you
Hangman.
Have to choose them. Hangman, yes,
and I don't care much for those mini games. The mini game that is really good is where you're like, what phrase goes into which sentence, or you know what I mean, and then flipping it.
Yeah, basically, like as the trial is happening, as everyone is throwing their arguments out there, you have to identify the one to shoot with your truth bullet.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
That mechanic is very well done, and then you gaining the ability to take a phrase out of someone's argument and then put it in somewhere else that really steps up how complicated it can get. A couple of those were incredibly difficult, but the ones I did nail felt incredibly satisfying, and I think the difficulty is just right for this game. Like it matched.
I remember you had some issue with it, and I think you were going to restart one of the chapters to change difficulty down, right? I think that's for just the mechanical minigame stuff, right? The kind of physical timing of it.
I started the mechanical minigames on easy and the non-mechanical bit on medium, and I was tempted to turn the non-mechanical bit down, but then I decided against it, and I think it would take my save file too far back, and then in reality I'm glad I stuck with it. And then yes, I did use a guide for some parts, but it wasn't that frustrating, and it was just, the game's quite generous when you game over. In most trials you don't go back very far, and it all worked out fine for me, so I was happy with that. It was
because I think that, like, kind of the let's call it the narrative difficulty, the like sussing out what happened part of it, I think is part of the joy of the game. It's the figuring out of the case, essentially. It is the being the detective part of it, which I think is you can turn that down to be easier, but then I think it loses a little bit of the surprise potentially in like some of the like thought process of what happened and what was going on.
Makes a lot of sense.
yeah, I'm interested to know, like, visually, art style wise, like, how did you feel about it as a big, very anime looking game with lots of anime looking characters? You know, what are your feelings on that?
It's good. It's a very believable world that all works well together, and I liked that. I don't have strong feelings like, oh, the characters are just designed so incredibly well, or oh my god, they look awful, or like
I guess they're very distinct, right? Like
they are distinct.
Part of this identity of this game, right? And I think I guess Squid Game is the best comparison for media.
It really is, and it's interesting how that's like long after.
Right, that you've seen anyway, right? I used Hunger Games as a reference point, but obviously you haven't seen that, so like Squid Game is probably like the best touch point for you. But like I think there's, you know, the main characters in series like that in Hunger Games and that there is always a like identity to them that is quite strong, and I think because Danganronpa is an anime style game, what they can do with that style is lean into the visual identity of characters. Like you take a character like Celeste, for example. She is like so clear in my mind of like, oh right, she's like the goth, like dark haired girl. Like I remember, and I remember she is like her French accent, like all this sort of stuff is very like ingrained because of like the strong visual identity of characters, and so they stick with you because you remember exactly what they look like, and it helps differentiate each one from each other as well, right? Making sure they kind of stay straight in your mind, which can be tricky when you have a cast of like 14 or something that you start with.
I do struggle with names and matching names to faces and this kind of thing.
Especially Japanese names in this case.
Japanese names. And I actually, at the start of the game, I was a bit intimidated. I was like, oh god, this is going to be an absolute nightmare. But you're right, the characters are so well designed that it's very distinct. The Celeste is the goth girl. I remember Celeste is the goth girl, and I can remember that, and that helps. I do think all the characters were very distinct, and I could... By a certain point, I could remember like what each of their kind of talents were and stuff like that. Yeah. And the game does do a good job of helping you memorize that, I'd say. And yeah, without talking about spoilers, I think Monokuma is just fantastic as like this central character. And at the start of the game, it's just so weird and mysterious. I'm like, are you a real bear? Are you being controlled by someone? Are you there's more than one of you? Like, how is this all working? And I'll say by the end of the game, there's not many stones left unturned in terms of understanding what is going on. And I love, people know in narratives, I like a good resolution. I don't love games that leave it really amorphous as to think what you think is happening. I don't think this game does that much at all. It's very much, we're going to tell you what's up, and that was cool. So yeah, I was very pleased overall. Excellent.
Well, yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about, non-spoilers? Otherwise, Bally, we can go into spoiler discussion.
Just before spoiler discussion, I was very strong on the names when I was playing it. I'm not that strong on the names now. I do have these names open, so I will try my best. But yeah, I'm ready to talk spoilers.
All right, let's do it. Let's get into spoilers about Danganronpa, Trigger Happy Havoc. Yeah, what shocked you the most? What were kind of like the big moments for you that stood out?
I think on the way the game sets up, so you are Makoto and you go to the school, and I'm like, right, this is like a central Tokyo school, very prestigious, fancy school. Everyone's got their talents. Okay, right, here we go, into the school. And then you wake up, and then at that exact moment, when you wake up and the school is shuttered, Monokuma is like winding you up. I'm just like, okay, what's happened? What has happened? I'm hooked. I'm like half an hour into this game and I'm hooked because I now need to know why is this bear? Where am I? Why is the school boarded up? And I think that the core through line of the narrative that explains the reasoning behind the school being boarded up and who Monokuma is all done incredibly well. Because I do love a bit of world building, and I was obsessed with, okay, but what's going on outside the school?
Exactly,
and you get so little of that, actually, even at the end. You get very little detail of outside the school. You really have this one shot of like a Statue of Liberty as Monokuma, and Monokuma at the Eiffel Tower, and basically what's the word, despair has taken over the world.
Right. It's essentially like a pandemic metaphor, right? Like it's basically saying, okay, what is this amorphous concept of despair, but it's like, okay, Junko has essentially made everybody sad and depressed, and the world has gone to shit essentially outside is basically what's happened.
Right. And I that part of like trying to work out what's outside the school is my biggest motivator to like play the second game. Like, what's going on? Where did they go? Who are these? Which characters continue? Do the characters continue? I don't know. But the explanation that okay, who's the white-haired girl? Who's like Sayaka?
Sayaka, yes.
Yeah, Sayaka, who's maybe my favorite character in the game. She's just
no,
like
so Sayaka is the first. She's your
apologies,
quote unquote girlfriend from the beginning.
Yeah,
who,
no,
like
hate
you
her.
knew from
Don't
previous.
like her.
We're talking about Kiriko, right?
Kiriko, there we go.
Yeah.
She's not on this list of characters for some reason.
Oh,
Bizarre.
okay. Yeah,
Anyway.
I think I'm pretty sure it's Kiriko, right? Kiriko Kirigi. She's the
her father is the headmaster.
Kyoko's my
Kyoko.
Kyoko. Kiriko is Overwatch 2 character.
Okay, right.
There's lots. Hey, look, even I have trouble sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Japanese names
Kyoko.
are tough as well. But
Yes, Kyoko, best character. I think maybe in the series from my perspective. Like, I think Kyoko's like excellent character. Obviously, like the one who knows quite a bit, or seems like she knows quite a bit going through it, but has like the sharpest mind, and definitely is a good character, good foil for Makoto as well.
Yeah, and my immediate thing was she's very knowledgeable. I'm trusting her way too much. She's going to backstab me at some point, a bit like Sayaka basically does. But she didn't, and like it just kept going, and she's really trustworthy. And then you have like a minor falling out with her. I can't remember over what, but then the reveal that her father is the headmaster.
Yes.
But before finding out her father is the headmaster, you think that the headmaster is like linked to oh my god, why is my brain got Monokuma, and you're like, the headmaster's evil. The headmaster did all this. The headmaster, but then to find out that the headmaster was basically trying to recruit some of the strongest students in Japan, I guess, in order to rebuild, to protect themselves from the outside world, in order to preserve humanity essentially and rebuild the world once this pandemic is cleared. And I think the thing that hit me the hardest in the whole game was the idea that the people you're playing with themselves are the ones who boarded up the damn school. It's just like my favorite reveal that like, of course.
Yes.
And
they locked themselves inside, essentially.
They locked themselves inside. And so I'll admit you'd never really find out how Junko used like memory loss or made
like it's kind of just like, oh, everyone just got amnesia. There was probably like something that they did right to make that happen.
Right, she could have injected us with something. I'll give the game a pass on that. It doesn't need to explain that.
There's a bit of anime bullshit like there,
and I'll give the game a huge amount of credit that I don't think narratively there's that much actual bullshit. Like there's some silly stuff that happens, but I would argue none of the silly stuff necessarily directly impacts the core narrative. I don't know if you agree.
I think it's all within the context of the world. I think that's the fundamental part of it. It's like, yes, there's like fantastical supernatural stuff to some degree, like this whole despair idea and like Junko and everything that goes on, but within its own rules of its own world, everything is consistent and makes logical sense, right?
Right. And I will say, so the character Junko, I think, is fascinating because she gets
a real
killed,
rug pull at the beginning, right?
She gets killed off really early. And I think, okay, but this is like an anime game. She's like good-looking blonde lady. They're killing her off very early. Like this feels surely you want your good-looking blonde lady to survive a bit longer. So I always thought that killing was weird.
Interesting.
Even early game.
Wow, I did not think that at all. So like when the whole Mukuro stuff happened and that reveal, that really did get me, because I was like, oh right, okay, we're just killing, like there's a bunch of anime characters here, we're just gonna kill one at the beginning as like a warning of like, oh, no one's safe here basically.
I thought that as well. But on top of that, I thought, okay, but why have they killed like the honey? Why have they done that? And I thought that was a little weird. But
the one that everyone's going to cosplay as, basically.
Pardon?
The one that everyone's going to cosplay.
The one that's and then by the end, she's got all these crazy Monokuma style black and red and white costumes,
Yeah.
and of course that must be a favorite character to cosplay as for sure.
Yes, yeah, I think that's it's one of those things of like, if you were ever at a convention and you're in the anime world and you hadn't played Danganronpa, it almost spoils it for you. The fact that so many people cosplay as Junko is like, well, this character who dies at the beginning, why are there so many people who cosplay as this character?
And then she has so many different personas almost, like at the end, and she's got these accents, and it's like, whoa, this character is a lot to like take in.
Yes.
So yeah, I was always curious. I never linked like my weird feelings about her dying so early to, oh, maybe she's linked to like the final big bad. But I will say the point at which I knew it was Junko was the photos. I don't know if you remember this, MZ, where there's one person in the photos with their back turned. And that's Junko, and that's the way that she keeps her identity secret so she can swap with Sayaka and the death next, etc. Not Sayaka, Mukuro. Sorry.
Yes. Who's the like military, the best military person?
Exactly. Right? So she switches it early, and then
they're like sisters, right? Twin sisters or something like that. I want to say.
Yes.
Is that
sisters?
Yeah. Right.
And she basically killed her sister.
Sacrificed her sister
so
to pretend that she had been killed, basically.
I think there's some really goofy stuff in here that is hilarious, where there's a character called Toko who has a dual personality, Jekyll and Hyde, and her Hyde, is it Jekyll? Who's the bad one, Jekyll or Hyde?
I think Hyde is the bad one. Yeah.
Right, so her Hyde is Genocide Jack, who is an actual killer.
Right, an actual serial killer.
An actual killer in Japan. And they never actually commit any murders in the game.
Right, yeah.
Which is amazing. And then one of the murders is based on, like, they try to frame Toko by making it look like a killing by Genocide Jack, but it backfires. Yes. I think that stuff was incredibly clever. I think the Yasuhiro suicide, that wasn't Yasuhiro, it was Sakura,
yeah, the closed room mystery, which in the context of the closed school as well as like they did it themselves, they locked themselves in, is also another kind of like meta, like there was this trial that focused on it, but also like the wider thing of them all kind of being locking themselves in.
And the explanation of like every time someone dies in a closed room, there's only like 4 explanations, and they talk through those explanations. I was like, this is really interesting. Like how, because this feels like a real world thing. Like if someone dies in a closed room, there's only 4 explanations, and that's it. Either the killer got out, it was a suicide, or the killer is still in the room, or there's one other I can't remember. But they basically explain all that, and that was just a really like maybe one of my favorite, if not my favorite, trials. Just so many good reveals. I think the reveal that Monokuma's like a robot and there's multiple Monokumas, and then you gradually work out there's like a control room. You then eventually go to this control room, and that's when my brain was like flipping, and I was like, okay, so that's definitely one of the students now. And then there's like a morgue later, and you realize that there's the wrong number of bodies, and that's when I was like, right. Okay, I think as I felt weird about the morgue, that's when you see the photos and the people are turned around, and like Junko's the one missing in all of these, and I knew it was Junko. That stuff was just, I just think it's so cleverly put together that I was just incredibly impressed with all these final reveals, and I'm very impressed overall. My expectations going in were, this game will probably be overly confusing, or it'll have too much anime bullshit that will just really annoy me, or I'm going to hit loads of dead ends and it's going to be frustrating. And it honestly was none of those, and the narrative was just like superb, and I came away very happy, very, very happy.
That's good. Yeah, I knew at the center of my being, like knowing the types of things you like in narratives and twists and stuff like that, I was like, this is going to be something. Yeah, resolution especially. I was like, this is going to be something that Bally, I think, will connect with, but there's still that hesitation of like, is it a bit too out there with some of the characterization, and like there's a lot of over-the-topness to these characters, right? The way they talk, the expressions, all that sort of stuff. So it was a question of like whether you could connect with that as well. But I do think that, I think the strongest characters in the games are some of the most grounded ones. Like I think Kyoko and Byakuya are the two like standouts of this cast for me. Those are the ones of like, they're almost like the angel and devil on your shoulder. Like Byakuya,
I was like, one is going to betray me and the other one is probably probably the hero of the game, and
Right.
I don't think Byakuya ever betrays you, but he's definitely in it for himself.
He is. He's definitely like, he's the smart guy in the room who is you just can't trust him. Like there's something that he's not letting on to. And yeah, but I think both of those characters are definitely the ones that I remember the most from the first game. Obviously because they last quite a long time, they both kind of get out at the end, but they are a little bit like two sides of the same coin, which I liked quite a bit. And yeah, I think there's a corniness to like Makoto being like, I'm the ultimate hope at the end. You know, there's a bit of friendship magic there, but I think it's earned. I think it's well done. And you know, there's still some mystery. Like, okay, they go outside. What the fuck are they going to find outside, right?
You don't see outside. You just
don't get
see
to see
them opening the door, and then the game ends. It's like that is a really good ending.
Yes.
It's like I think any good ending has a good amount of resolution, but it doesn't give you 100% of what's going on if you want to do a sequel or something. So
exactly, yeah, it keeps it open, which is great. So, yeah. Any other thoughts? Any other favorite characters that you had from the game?
Yeah, Byakuya, as you said, Monokuma. Just the Junko spiel at the end was just so overwhelming and in your face. I was just so shocked.
Just the way she hops between accents and personalities is like, yeah, you can kind of understand the wildness of Monokuma because that character is essentially her talking through that character the whole game, right? And then when it's distilled into just her going wild, it's I think it's very effective, and it kind of happens as everything is kind of culminating, and so you're thrown off by like the narrative reveal, and then you're dealing with this character who is just like going crazy with all the like stuff that she's doing. Basically.
I really liked the relationship between Sakura and Aoi.
Yes,
that or Hina, she's called.
Asahina. Yeah,
Asahina. It was nice, and like how upset Hina was about Sakura, killing themselves later in the game. Like that hit pretty hard. And then a character like Yasuhiro, where I think he's one of the survivors.
He is, yes. He gets out at the end.
The way that he is basically in denial for the first half of the game, almost like
right.
He really is just convinced this is all a setup. This is staged. This is not real. And seeing him kind of spiral, I think, was very interesting. I will say that Toko and the whole Jekyll and Hyde with Genocide Jack did get a bit wearing, and it was very like freaky and in your face every time she turned. I was like, oh god, okay, right, yeah, I remember you.
Right, yeah.
That was kind of annoying by the end, but not too bad. And yeah, I think as we said, Kyoko and Byakuya easily the most interesting, and they're obviously there at the end, and you have a hell of a lot of dialogue with them. They were the best. And Makoto himself is a nice. He's vanilla-ish, but he still has a lot to say and doesn't feel complete. He's still an important character in the game. It's not just
he's
a
not
faceless
fully
person.
Yeah, he's not a full self-insert character, right?
Yeah.
Like he still has his own history and background and reason he's there and all that sort of stuff, which I think is it's all well put together, well explained in the end. So
what were your feelings when playing it and the big reveals that we've discussed?
Yeah, I mean, like I devoured this game. I think I finished it in like 5 days or something. Like because I just couldn't stop. I was so hooked on it. So I played this on the Vita when it, when I had my Vita. I think it was a few years after it came out, and I had never really played something. I mean, like Phoenix Wright stuff, of course, but like aside from that, like other visual novels, this was one of the first ones that I'd really got deep into, and it felt very revelatory to me. I loved the story. I thought it just really was excellent, and like I think all those like little revelations, I think the breadcrumbing of this game is so good, of just like, okay, we solved this, now there's this other thing that's going to happen, and they like seed some stuff, like seeding of things, little bits of information, like you're constantly thinking in your head, like what is this going to lead to, and there are some red herrings in there as well. Like I think generally the series is very good at pacing itself, and giving you enough to hold on to the wider mystery while also being super interesting in the moment of every case going on and all the individual things happening. So I was blown away by it, and I think it was my number 3 Goti Dakoti that year.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
pretty high up as well. So.
I think one of the first things that hit me really hard was finding out that the school was being broadcast to the outer world.
Yes.
And before you know that it's pseudo-apocalyptic and pandemic or whatever, I'm thinking, why is no one in the outside world trying to get through
do
to
something
us?
about it?
Because we're like a school in the center of Tokyo, according to the start of this game. Like, what the hell is going? Like, I was really like, what is going on? That was the bit that really made it like, okay, something is going on that's so much more beyond what this game has told me so far. And as like, it's very metaphorical that these students are in the school, some of them going mad and very frustrated. You as the player are in the school. You don't know what's on the outside. You're getting mad and frustrated. Like, there is there's a
synergy there, right, between player and character.
Real energy that is very real about this game. That is, it's just an incredibly well told story. And could it be done in a film? I'm not so sure. I think that there's an energy to it that works really well for a 25-hour video game.
There is an anime adaptation.
Of course, right? You did
this.
say,
that does exist. There is also another anime thing that is tied into this as well.
Did you ever watch the anime?
So, like one of the animes wraps up a certain story that doesn't get resolved in the game, basically. So if you want the full context, you have to watch that. But that's later.
Doing?
It's once you've played 2 and 3, basically.
Okay,
then you can decide, because it gives you context for that stuff. But yeah, I think one of the most fun things as well is like in what do you call it? In hindsight, when you look back on the beginning of the game, Makoto arriving at the school at the beginning and then him waking up in the classroom, that's like 3 years have passed basically between those two scenes, essentially. Because the very beginning is him going to the school being like, I'm going to start my first day, and then obviously he goes to school, stays there for however many years, like learns stuff, and then all the shit happens, they have to board it up, and then he wakes up like amnesiac, essentially. So at the very beginning of the game, you basically have a 3-year time jump between that very beginning and
the gradual rollout of some of those pictures is so trippy. I was like, if this is playing with multiple universes, I'm going to be so cross.
Oh no!
At this plot. And it doesn't, and that's good.
There's no time travel here, Bally. You're safe.
There's no time. There's time skipping, but
yeah, definitely.
A clever type of time travel, not actual multiverse bollocks. But
yes.
Great.
Well,
I look forward to playing the second game, and we can have a similar discussion.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I'd love to. I would say so. My ranking for the series overall is 3, 1, 2. So 2 is my least favorite overall, but that doesn't mean it's a bad game by any means. Like, it's just the one that I think 1 has the most impact because it's the first one, and 3 is a fucking buck wild adventure. So if you thought 1 had some shit, oh boy, just wait until you get to 3.
I remember your reactions to 3 and like, oh boy, yeah.
The end of 3, it's probably my favorite ending to any piece of media in history. Like, I just I love it so much. But yeah, 2 is excellent. 2 is really good. 2 has one of the best individual cases in the whole series. So there's some really good stuff in there. There's also some stuff like from the very beginning, I'm like, this game is fucking with me. Like, there is a certain character, and you'll know exactly who it is when you meet them. There's a certain character you're like, this has to be this, right? And it's like, this game is fucking with me, and like the way it all comes together, I think is excellent. So
I look forward to that.
It's exciting stuff. There's some really good reveals in there as well.
This game has slowed down because I do intend to play the next Phoenix Wright, but this series has gotten in the way. Like, I need to play the next game first because I did intend to play the second.
I think also because like there's a narrative through line between the games as well, which is always, and I think like Phoenix Wright does also have that, but it was in an era where that wasn't as pronounced generally.
Right.
Like Phoenix Wright 3, still probably the best one, and is the one that ties them all together, almost retrospectively. But I think Danganronpa as a series from the beginning was almost set up to be like, the way they end it is like they're setting up for a sequel, right? And it is going to explain some stuff.
Cool.
So yeah. Lovely. Well, that's exciting stuff. I'm very, very glad. I'm glad I gave that to you, Bally. And now you're on your journey for more anime games.
My journey.
yeah, we'll,
I'm here for
we'll
it.
get some more great stuff for you to play soon. But we are going to take a break right here. We'll be back after that with our predictions for 2025 with Nintendo. See you in a bit. All right, everybody, welcome back to the second part of today's show. It's time to talk about the future. You know, it's coming inevitably. Every word.
We've already done our bonus pod about the Switch 2.
Yeah, there's, you know, the future is happening. The future is now. It is the Nintendo Switch 2, and everyone's talking about it. But, you know, I do think, Bally, that we have been a little bit blessed in this way, because if we had done this prediction segment at the start of the year, right, we would have probably been focusing more on the hardware itself and what it would be. And now the hardware itself is kind of out of the way.
Yeah.
It does let us focus on some other things a little bit more, and we can talk about, you know, the wider catalog of like what's going to go on. I think there's enough tease in there to be like, what's up with this feature that's potentially going to be there? Like, are they going to surprise us with a weird thing still, while still, you know, having context for what the system is? Which is nice.
Did you listen to Kind of Funny's predictions for the
I
Nintendo Switch 2?
did. Yeah, I've listened to.
I felt their predictions were kind of weak sauce, you know.
Oh, okay, a bit safe, you think?
Yeah, very safe. They don't go into many details. They just go, I think Ocarina of Time remake is happening, and that's a prediction. And it's kind of like, no, that's not how we do it.
That's not how we do. We do like layered predictions here with like 17 parts to them.
Yeah.
Which means that nobody ever gets any points, but I mean,
but then you can kind of scrabble a couple of half points or quarter points.
It's all about the 1/3 points here on this show.
Right.
You know, that's what we're all about. But yes, as in traditional fashion, I'm sure we both got some interesting predictions, some maybe more safe ones, but some wild ones as well. And
I think we should give the context that January 2024, the rumors were very, very, very strong that like the Switch 2 was coming in 2024.
Yes,
and
very
here
much
we are,
so.
January 2025, and obviously it's not here yet. And I think that is just something to keep in mind when we go through.
When we go over from last year's predictions, exactly. Which I have not looked at, and I don't know what they are. So once again, as always, Bally, you will surprise me with my previous thoughts, and then I might look at them and be like, "Oh no, I predicted the same thing 2 years in a row," because my brain sometimes will do the same thing. But I think I've got some different stuff.
That stopped me from being able to steal any of mine from the previous year, and
that's good. Yeah,
so all of mine are more fresh.
Very good. Well, I think I'll probably have most of mine be different anyway. So, yes, Bally, let's go back into the mists of the past of 2024. And let's run through our prediction from last year and see if anybody got any points at all.
Right, who's first?
Let's do you first. I feel like you always go with me first. So
right.
Let's do you first.
Okay, I predicted in 2024, first prediction, Nintendo Switch 2 will launch summer 2024 on Friday the 20th of September. Mario Kart will be a launch game, but 3D Mario, like Odyssey, Galaxy, and Sunshine, will be launch window rather than launch itself. Nintendo will push down all their creative pride in favor of shareholder interests, and the Switch 2 will in fact be called the Switch 2. North America is Nintendo's biggest market, and the naming convention that is most important to this market. And then a 2 on the end is the easiest way to make it consistent with North America, basically. So
right, yeah.
I got the year wrong and the name right. So I think that's worth half a point.
I guess so. I think we can give you half point because now here's the thing: if we had done these predictions at the regular time before this was announced, we wouldn't be able to give you any points because we still wouldn't know. Yeah, I guess that's half point for getting the name correct and saying the Mario Kart thing as well. Because I mean, my assumption is, we've seen Mario Kart. It's likely that that's going to be a early title. We don't know if it's launched yet, but it's going to be likely very early. So.
Nintendo will manage to agree a deal that Hollow Knight Silksong will be one of the launch games for the Nintendo Switch 2. Microsoft's deal is tied to the game being on Game Pass day one, but no date as of yet confirmed. Silksong will score 96 on OpenCritic and will be top-selling indie of the year. It will become the first indie game to ever win Game of the Year at the TGAs.
Wow, okay.
That prediction wasn't ready for Balatro at all, was it?
No, it wasn't. It certainly wasn't. No.
I think Balatro probably was the best-selling indie of 2024.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Probably. So that's 0 points. We won't see Metroid Prime 4 in 2024. Instead, Metroid Prime Trilogy Remastered will be a launch game for Switch 2 and will have been given the same treatment to Metroid Prime 2 and 3 as 1 got in 2023. Prime 4 will be 2025 and will not come to the original Nintendo Switch.
Well, they did show us Prime 4.
This is all over the place and goes against what happened, which was Metroid Prime 4 was shown off in 2024 and is on the original Switch and is coming this year, supposedly. So
yes,
that's no points.
Yeah.
We'll see 2D Zelda announced in a post-Switch 2 Nintendo Direct in October. It will come out in spring 2025. It will be the first ground-up original 2D Zelda in 20 years, with Minish Cap coming out in 2004. This is worth half a point.
I think it might be worth a point. Like there is some small, like, it's coming in 2025 stuff and it's October, but like you nailed that it's the first original 2D Zelda.
There we go.
And I do think that's probably worth a point, honestly. So
okay. And then my wild one was Wii Sports 2. Nintendo can't help themselves. It's going to launch with the Switch 2.
The possibility is still there.
That's still a possibility, but won't count next time. But yeah, I'll take 1.5 points.
That's pretty good. That's pretty solid. Yeah.
Are you feeling confident?
No, because I don't remember any of my predictions.
Okay, here we
go. No, all I remember is Switch Up.
Because that's everyone keeps talking. Here we go.
Yeah, that's what everyone keeps talking to me about the whole year. It's the one I haven't forgotten because no one will shut up about it, basically. Mainly Ali T, in fact.
Yes.
But yeah.
Number 1, Nintendo Switch Up. See, the thing is, you number your predictions as well. I'm just all over the place.
Okay.
The back of the system has a projector so that you can lie in bed and point it at the ceiling, thus granting you the ability to play in bed, adding a third way to enjoy the Switch. It will be a gimmick that people use for a week before deciding it's too compromised to be worth it. Launches September 2024 with 128 gigabytes of storage, a new 3D Mario, another Nintendo Warriors game, probably Metroid Warriors, and Sushi Striker 2.
Oh yeah, Sushi Striker 2, hell yeah.
That's a bit of a deep cut prediction, but yeah, so that's probably a 0.
I think so, yeah.
Number 2, Mother 3 turns 18. Now that it is finally of age, it is celebrated by another game in the series finally getting remade. Earthbound gets a remake in the style of Super Mario RPG. As we get to the end of Switch, Nintendo needs a few more remakes up its sleeve, and this one would please fans. You were right about the remakes coming for the end of Switch, just not that one, which sounds awesome. Earthbound.
God, an Earthbound in the style of the Mario RPG remake. What a great prediction from me. I think I just make good predictions that people want to happen, and that's why Nintendo will never make them happen, you know? So, yeah.
Number 3. ARMS returns, but in the same way that Pikmin and Chibi Robo had mediocre 2D platforming outings from subpar studios. However, this one will be good. The arms will be used like grappling hooks, almost Spider-Man style, as you swing through levels, but also for attacking and punching enemies. It will be Mega Man style, where each level ends with a character from the original game as a boss. It is made in collaboration with WayForward, who have had time to work on this with the time it took for Advance Wars to actually release. What I think we found out what they are working on. I've forgotten what it is.
Yeah, I don't know now.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, I like how creative I got with this. This is good. I would still like this game to exist.
It still might come for the launch.
It still might happen. You know, like I don't know. I think like generally, I always want Nintendo to do more with their IP, right? Like take these games and give them the Kirby treatment, right? They're so happy to give Kirby fucking everything. And I'm like, can we just do that with other IP? Can we just take Splatoon and do a fashion game, or take, you know, Mario? Well, I guess Mario gets enough spin-offs on his own, but, you know, take some of these other franchises, take Zelda and do more with Zelda. You know, Zelda has had some spin-offs, but it could do even more.
That's not crossbow shooting or something else.
Totally, yeah. I think there's loads of weird, like, spin-off things you can do with some of these franchises that could be fun and different, so...
On that question of Kirby being in other things, your fourth prediction is Kirby Vampire Survivors.
Oh man,
Nintendo are always late to the party with new genres and trends, and there is one character that they always like to put out there to experiment, namely Kirby. The best part is that this actually makes sense. Kirby naturally sucks things up, and that is the method of defeating enemies, potentially in this case sentient food. The types of food he focuses on inhaling provides the power-ups. It will be download only, and they will charge £15 for it, despite the competition. All being £5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think like now is the time that Nintendo would do a Vampire Survivors, like well after the trend. Like we're a good 2 years removed. This is the time when the iron strikes from Nintendo. They're like, now we're going to do it.
Right.
So I think this year is the year that it happens instead. So
there we go.
Yeah.
Number 5, Scare Me. Inspired by Lethal Company and Among Us, Nintendo make you play as Miis and have you explore a horror-filled spaceship with weird Miis.
I gotta say, last year, probably my best predictions of all time. I think all of these are bangers. All of these are really good ideas that should have happened, and none of them have happened. And I just want to say to Nintendo, I'm disappointed in you as a company. You know, like you really should have done these. These are great ideas from me. So. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's still something there, you know, with the Miis to do something with them.
I think these 2024 predictions are worth just keeping on this dock and having a look at in 2026, because I think there's a lot of Switch 2 predictions in here that I'd be interested if anything sticks.
Yeah. I think that's definitely interesting. I feel like this year I've not gone more safe, but there's definitely like it's more focused on Switch 2 generally, of course, and things around it. So we'll see, but I feel like last year was one of those years where it's very hard to know what was going to happen, because if Switch 2 didn't happen, then it was like, well, what is there going to be? And so it was good, I think, generally, but yeah, Bally, you take this pretty decisively. I had none of my predictions anywhere close to coming true, so yeah, shame on me, but I think they're all good.
It's a tough game.
I
think doing predictions as well for any company, Nintendo's one of the toughest. So
for sure, because like, you know, all those sound ridiculous now when you say them, but like, are they really that ridiculous? You know, I feel like
they're not. And we don't want our predictions to be boring and safe, because I think there are way too many boring and safe predictions out there. So
for sure, yeah.
Right, okay. Should we get to it?
Let's do it, Bally. Let's get into 2025 predictions for Nintendo. Kick us off, Bally, with your first prediction.
I'm going to go something away from like the hardware of the Switch 2. I'm going to focus on indies. I'm going to say Mini Shoot Adventures will come to the Switch 2. And as a result of coming to the Switch 2, it will feature multiple Game of the Year discussions on podcasts that we listen to, and it will have a Hollow Knight 2017 energy, as of course Hollow Knight actually first released in 2016. Right. It will even get at least one nomination in a TGA category in the year 2025.
Wow.
I would also like to repeat this prediction for Nine Souls.
Ooh, interesting. So, Hollow Knight, I believe, was 2017, originally 2018 on Switch, I think is what it was. Oh, really?
Okay.
Yes.
No, fair enough.
So, Hollow Knight did come out in the year to end all years, 2017. But I think, so yeah, Switch, it came a little bit later. But
right, yes.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting. I feel like you're right in the conversation around these games I think today is more interesting than a few years ago because I think literally no one was talking about Hollow Knight in 2017, and then everyone was talking about it in 2018.
Does that show how much more people are playing PC games and might be a Steam Deck influence, at least in our podcast circles or something?
I believe so, and I think that is a Steam Deck influence, first and foremost, is that this thing is far more console-like, it's far more accessible to people who don't have PCs, and therefore a lot of people are using it to play those, not to mention just the rise of PC generally in the last few years. I think it's just become such a dominant platform, and now with Xbox, PlayStation putting their games on PC at a regular clip, it just feels like so many more people are making the decision to not have a console and to have PCs instead. And I think the ecosystem that we listen to podcasts in are still very console centric, and so I still see this being something that could possibly happen. But it might be less so just because those games are more known quantities now than would have been the case a few years ago. I think, Miniature Adventures would have been completely unknown, probably even to like us back in 2017.
Yeah.
And then it would come to Switch, or whatever, and people would be like, oh, this is a thing that I really like. I think Nine Souls is more likely to have that treatment.
I think it came to consoles. It was just very late in the year. I think that's its biggest issue.
Correct, yes. But I think that's more likely to get the treatment you're talking about, more people discussing it, because it is...
Sounds like it's got a really good story and stuff as well in the world, and I really would like to play that this year.
I think that one maybe has a chance to weirdly like come back around, because the way that these nominations work is generally more based around like when most people played them and the context of that time. So I can see, like, if Nine Souls is a Switch 2 launch thing, like that then brings it to people, forefront of people's brains more so. It has the indie effect, right? I think the indie effect of Hollow Knight was it came to the console, the Switch, a year after its release when indies were popping on Switch, right? That was like the thing that people were playing, because 2018 especially was a year where Nintendo didn't have a great lineup for Switch. It's one of the weaker Switch years, where they had Smash Brothers and they had Let's Go Pikachu, and I think that was mainly the big games for 2018. The rest of it was pretty slim picking, so big indies coming to Switch, like Hollow Knight in that year, I think got more of a spotlight and therefore had a bit more conversation around them. So, I think there's a slim chance that happens. So hopefully they do. I certainly will be playing Nine Souls this year. It's on my list to get to. So
me too. Yeah,
looking forward to it. Okay. Any other thoughts on that, Bally? Are we?
No, I don't think so.
Right, great. Okay, so I've got a prediction here that is multiple games, basically. So I don't know what decision we'll come to next year when we adjudicate it, but if I get half of them correct, then maybe that's a half point. Who knows?
We'll get there.
All right, so let's just use this as a way to talk about a lot of different games at once. The following games will release for the Switch 2 in 2025. I have a list of 8 video games. Four of these are first-party Nintendo. 4 of these are third-party games. Okay.
This is in the year 2025.
This is in 25, before this show in 26. So this is not calendar.
They will be out or announced to come out.
They will come out. They will have been released.
Okay.
Yeah, they will have come out and be playable. So this is not for the first 12 months of Switch 2's life cycle, because obviously by January next year we won't be able to deduce that, assuming again this console comes out in June, which a lot of rumors are pointing to and lots of speculation is pointing to. So for 6 months in this year we have these 8 video games. There's a theme for the Nintendo ones: Metro Prime 4 Beyond, Fire Emblem 4 Remake, Splatoon 4, and New 3D Mario, you could also call it Open Mario 4, following the lineage of 64, Sunshine, Odyssey,
clever, I like it,
and 4. So there you go. We'll have 4s all across the board for Switch 2 from Nintendo. There will also be 4 big third-party games coming to Nintendo Switch 2. Final Fantasy VII Remake, Cyberpunk 2077.
Oh, that's a good shout.
Elden Ring, and most importantly, you need a game from a third party that really shows the power of the mouse. Baldur's Gate 3 is my final one.
I love that, because everyone's just like, Civ 7, Civ 7, but Baldur's Gate 3 is a great shout.
Yeah, it's It's the Zeitgeist game that Nintendo still has not had on their platform. There are lots of classic CRPGs. In fact, the old Baldur's Gate games, I believe, are on Switch. But this mouse stuff, if the juice is true with it, I think they've got to have a third-party game that Nintendo get on board to be like, hey, this is a PC thing, but you can play it on this console just as good. Because obviously there's people who played Baldur's Gate on console. I think some of the conversation around that was like, yeah, you can play it on console, but it's a little finicky. The controls are not all the way there. This is a PC and keyboard game. You really got to do it that way. And if Nintendo have a mouse for Baldur's Gate 3, I think that is a pretty good conversion for people. So
I also think people are sleeping on the idea of Splatoon 4 coming in 2025. I think that's a very, very, very likely early Switch 2 game.
Especially for a Japanese audience, and especially as a game to hook people back onto Switch Online, right?
Right.
Like,
you need a multiplayer game that is not Mario Kart.
Correct,
this
yes.
year.
Well, maybe you don't because Mario Kart's so powerful, but like I do think that it would be worthwhile for them to have that. Now, is this a little bit too much squeeze in the year, having Splatoon and Metroid and 3D Mario and Mario Kart in the first 6 months? Maybe, and I think that's where it could be a bit of a tipping point if they might want to space things out a little bit more.
I think they'll just do one a month for 4 or 5 months, you know. And
yeah.
Like, some podcast was mentioning, like, the only Nintendo first party game that's come out that wasn't designed by a like a second party studio, like Mercury, Steam, whatever. Mm-hmm. The only game that's come out is Echoes of Wisdom, I think someone said.
Right, yes.
Well, that was 2 years.
I think that's
Grezzo.
Year? I think that's an original Grezzo game, right? Echoes of Wisdom. They worked with the Zelda team on it.
Right, okay.
So
maybe I've got this stat a bit wrong, but my point is there's not many Nintendo first party games come out because they're working on Switch 2 stuff.
They're all working on Switch 2 stuff. The Fire Emblem 4 remake is interesting because there's some rumors that that's going to be in a February Switch Direct as opposed to a Switch 2 thing. I still think it probably counts as a Switch 2 thing because it will probably be playable on Switch 2 as well, but I don't know. We can judge that in the moment whenever that happens.
Okay.
But I do think this is the year. Like, it's been long enough for Fire Emblem, and we know that the previous one they were actually sitting on for like a couple of years. So like they have a new one ready to go, and I think a launch year, a remake, I think it's a good one to put out there as a dying embers of Switch, but also something you can play on Switch 2 and will maybe look better on that potentially. So yeah, I think, you know, the third-party games, the rumors have been around 7 remakes. I think that one's relatively safe. I think Cyberpunk and Elden Ring are two, like, different sides of a coin of, like, Cyberpunk is the highly technical open-world game. Elden Ring is the one that appeals most to a Nintendo audience, Breath of the Wild fans,
Fantasy
right?
Open world, yeah.
Fancy. So I think those are, like, two nice different approaches. And then, like I said, I think Baldur's Gate 3 is the use of the mouse on the Joy-Con that we
That's
can
cool.
get that working.
And it would make it more appealing to me, for example, than playing on one of my other consoles. Like, that's a really cool idea.
Exactly, yes. Like, I think if someone owns a Switch 2 and a PS5, where's the best place to play Baldur's Gate 3? It might actually be Switch 2 if that's the easier control scheme for people. So
cool.
So, yeah.
I like it. I like that
all
prediction. Right, my next prediction. Nintendo will nail the crossover from Nintendo Switch 1 to Switch 2. All digital games are tied to your account and will seamlessly be able to be downloaded onto the Switch 2's 500GB hard drive.
500, okay.
The eShop will have a clear delineation between Switch 1 and Switch 2 games and be incredibly easy to use. The new eShop will even have a banging tune and have far more functionality due to the power of the Switch 2. However, there is a catch. You must be subscribed to Nintendo Online in order to link your consoles and enjoy your digital library from Switch 1. It will only be free and seamless for physical games.
Wow. You know, there's always a catch.
There's always
the other foot dropping. I can see them doing this. I mean, they definitely have to have a reason for people to use Switch Online. Now, if they carry everything over.
I've got another prediction that'll be for that, but yes.
Okay, but does that also mean that they carry over the Switch Online apps like Game Boy and all that other stuff, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that does count. And I think it's interesting because it feels like to some degree there's less excitement when that happens because it's like, oh, it's just like, here's all my games I still have to play in my backlog. There's almost like, I think one of the joys of the old days of consoles was it's a clean slate.
Yeah,
there's brand new
slate
stuff.
Is a nice feeling.
And like the only thing I have is this launch game to play, and that's why launch games get so much mileage, is because it's all I've got and I want to use my new system for my new game.
I'm playing it on the shiny new thing.
Exactly. But it's nice though. I think it is nice, and I think in this modern era, everyone wants to have everything that they own in all places. So being able to carry that over makes sense. So specifically, then, that we are gonna, you won't be able to transfer your digital stuff unless you have it tied to Switch Online.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to, if you want your save files, you're going to have Switch Online anyway.
Right,
because
for cloud saves, yeah.
Cloud save stuff will transfer over. I wonder how the transfer process will look. Okay, I don't know if this is any of your predictions, but if we have a Switch to Switch 2 transfer process, are we seeing Pikmin walking on that screen? Is that happening?
I don't think that will happen, because I don't think it's not a formal process. I think you just have games tied to your account and you can choose to download them, a bit like a PS4 to 5.
Right. So you just go onto your eShop and it's like, here's what you own.
Yeah,
now
exactly.
Choose what you want. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
And you can tab it between Switch 1 and Switch 2, and they're like, yeah, I digitally own Mario Odyssey. I'll download that. I've got my save file. Let's jump in, and yeah.
Yeah. The eShop itself, then. Tell me about this music. Tell me about,
the music
lyrics?
is banging. It is this. It has, so at least for the start of the Switch 2 life cycle, while there's not an absolute bajillion games on the eShop, I think they probably will do a little bit of culling on some of the absolute dross that is on the Switch 1 eShop. I don't think every single game is necessarily going to come across. I think they will probably cull a bit. We'll see. But yeah, it's a very, very catchy theme tune that multiple podcasts will be talking about. We will really enjoy reminiscing about the Wii and the 3DS, because we are now really enjoying this new shop tune, and it's just going to be the main thing about the new eShop is the tune, and it's going to be so much more seamless and smooth than the goddamn Switch 1 eShop, which is just a mess, and I'm excited about it.
Now, my question about this: how do we have a situation where we can download all of our games, but the eShop is different and refreshed? Because I guess the problem being is, if you want to keep that transfer process, or like make it easy to have old stuff be present, to me it almost feels like the eShop has to keep its infrastructure, which it's obviously bending under the weight of right now.
Yeah, I think that infrastructure, it will not be bending anymore, because it will be on new servers. The Switch 2 servers, it's had a huge upgrade, and there'll be really clear tabs of Switch 1 or Switch 2.
I guess what you could do is you could have a fresh eShop where the Switch 2 eShop is its own entity, right?
Right.
And if you want to buy Switch 1 games, you have to
boot up a Switch 1 inside your Switch 2, like a Wii and the Wii U or something.
Yeah, or like you said, like maybe there's two eShops. Maybe there's a Switch 1 eShop that's the old shit.
I think it's one eShop with tabs, personally.
Okay, yeah. Because I do think, like, if you're going to do a brand new thing with Switch 2, you have to rebuild that whole thing. Like,
yes, and they will. It's worth doing.
Yeah.
I mean, they will in my prediction.
Yes. They will. No, it's definitely, this is, as we know, our predictions always come true. So, yeah. Okay, cool.
MZ.
Mine kind of leans into that, goes in a slightly different direction, but it is still around the eShop. So, the mouse controls, we're going back in the mouse, will allow new freedoms on Switch 2, such as browsing the eShop, right? You can use the mouse to browse the eShop, which makes it easier to take a look through. I think Nintendo have already, to some degree, opened the floodgates. There's so many hentai games, puzzle weird games, knockoff hacks of like unpacking and stuff on there. They clearly don't care, but the problem is it's still hard to submit a game onto the eShop, right? Every console platform has these hoops you have to jump through. You have to do these submissions. It takes forever. It's a whole to-do. And Nintendo are potentially missing out on a lot of video games out there in the world, right? Their big competitor in this realm, obviously, is PC, where you can put everything and it's no barrier to entry. So, Nintendo, in a rare bit of wisdom, are going to take a Steam-like approach, and they're going to open the floodgates. They're going to say, anyone out there, you can easily just upload to our backend a video game and put it on the eShop, And obviously, this is going to result in a flood of video, even more than before. It's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be terrible. But what it does mean is it means that indie devs are much more easily able to just get their game onto Switch 2. This means no more waiting for games like Tiny Terry and Minishoot to come to the platform, because Steam and Switch are going to be the easy day one games. You can just, as an indie, you can put it on both, and the one version you make works on both Switch 2 and on Steam easily, because Nintendo have opened it, made it much more easy for you to do that. So what that also means specifically is, as a result, early access games will be allowed on Switch, and developers will be able to have their early access game be on Switch and on Steam simultaneously, and can then update them in that way. And the reason they're able to do this is because even if they built a game for just mouse and keyboard support, with the new mouse of the Switch 2, they can now do this, and they can have a game with just mouse controls.
I mean, there's no keyboard that we know of, right?
So, this is true, yes. This is the problem with the whole thing, but I don't know how this mouse stuff's going to work. Is the left Joy-Con going to be like your keyboard, essentially, your movement, your other buttons? Like, there's obviously buttons missing.
Your left hand is wearing a power glove that is typing a virtual keyboard in space.
Exactly, yeah. But I think, this democratization allows a wider variety of games onto the eShop, and lets early access games now be allowed on Switch 2. So you no longer have to wait for any of those. You can join in on the early access conversation as a console owner. And I know Microsoft has done a little bit of this with their game preview stuff on Xbox. PlayStation are probably the company who have least done it. I know Palworld is coming to PlayStation, but it's still in early access, and there's a couple of situations like that. But, Valheim is still only on PC. Imagine a world where you could just have early access Valheim on Switch.
I like the day one more indies on Switch. I love that idea. I think Nintendo would like that, but I just cannot see Nintendo greenlighting the amount of dross that gets on Steam day one in a way that they'd be happy with for Switch.
See, you say that, but look at the Switch eShop right now and how much dross there is on it. There's so much porn and...
But that's just the dross that has jumped through the hoops. We're not talking about the wider dross, right?
Yes, obviously. But and of course, they would need infrastructure to handle this and make sure that, because the way that Steam works is it's all built around a review system, and stuff that gets no reviews gets buried and you never see it. 70% of games on Steam no one ever sees, because they just disappear into the ether and are just basically shadow banned, essentially.
I think they add their own special Nintendo hoops that are very annoying,
right?
But the Nintendo hoops are just not annoying enough where you're still going to get Tiny Terry day one. It's going to be more than Steam that prevents thousands of games still getting in, but it's not going to be so many hoops that developers go, oh, can't be bothered with Nintendo, we'll just do Steam. I think you might be onto something on that area. But.
Yeah, and of course, Nintendo has the worst infrastructure for this from an eShop perspective, so they're really going to have to turn things around to make this work, because otherwise it doesn't work at all. So, yeah, you have to do a lot.
Right, let's talk Mario.
Let's do it.
The new Mario game will be shown off in April, and it's going to show off the mouse functionality.
Okay.
People across the board with their predictions are far too conservative with their mouse predictions. It's all about the new Mario Maker is going to use a mouse. You're going to use a menu and use a mouse. You're going to use it. It's no. That's not how Nintendo roll with their gimmicks, their things that they add to systems. There are going to be multiple boss fights in the 3D Mario where you are grabbing Mario by the mouse and you're pulling him through a bullet hell to avoid phases of bosses.
Okay.
You pick him up and drag him. There'll be areas where you're using both Joy-Cons simultaneously to catapult Mario across the stage. But here's the thing. Nintendo will be very careful about the small sections of the game that include this functionality, because that's how they manage to keep it quirky and fresh, and it doesn't become like this, well, here we go, waggle the mouse again to do this, waggle it to do that. A bit like aspects of the Wiimote became in games, a little bit like Galaxy or Twilight Princess, right? Swing the sword, okay, we get it. This game's going to do very well. 3D Mario will take home the goatee crown for 2025 from the TGAs, and it will mark 2 successive years of 3D platformers winning.
Wow. Do you have any thoughts on how the mouse stuff would work when you're playing in handheld mode?
Just doesn't work.
It just doesn't work. Okay, great. Perfect.
No, well, handheld mode is... it doesn't work because the screen comes off separately and the Joy-Con is down on a mat or a pad.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you do these, basically you're saying that Nintendo will force you, even if you're in handheld mode, to take off a Joy-Con and use it as a mouse.
There could be some functionality in the games to allow you to use sticks, but it will be very suboptimal, and you and me will not choose to do that. We will want to use them. Well, we always fall for the Nintendo gimmick.
Of course
We're a bad
we do,
example, but our podcasting circles will want to do the mouse because it works so much better than the sticks, in the same way that the majority of Splatoon players prefer the motion than pure sticks.
Oh my god, Splatoon with mouse controls. Now I'm back in, I'm back in. I think it's reasonable to say this because if you'll remember, Mario Odyssey at launch had a move you could only do by having the Joy-Cons detached.
Oh my god.
So they're not above this. They're not above making something that you can't do.
So there are people with what's the little Switch called again?
The Switch Lite,
Are there people with the Switch Lite who just don't have all the moons in Mario Odyssey and never will?
Yeah, maybe.
That's
That
wild.
could very well be the
wild.
case. So that could very well be true. Like, they could just be like, no, motherfucker, take it off and start using it. The thing that really gets me about this mouse stuff is, for me, it's fine. I play my Switch at a desk where my PC is, and I literally have a mouse mat next to me. So this is going to work great for me. You and most other normal people sit in front of a television. How the fuck are you going to use a mouse on a pillow? Like, I just don't understand it.
Before we moved house last March, I was working from home for close to 3-4 years, predominantly not using a desk. Caroline would normally have the desk. I'd normally be on the sofa. I would have a laptop on my crotch on a cushion, and my mouse would be down on the sofa, and that was my functionality.
And you didn't have a mouse mat underneath it?
I did not have a mouse mat.
What the fuck?
The sofa worked really well, and
wow,
I would attempt to the same. If I needed a mat or something, I'm quite convinced that Nintendo are going to sell branded mats for this situation, and I will buy one of those. That's
crazy. Yeah, okay, I guess there's easier ways to do it than I was imagining. But my imagination is using a mouse on a sofa just seems like a bad thing.
I think the desk is optimal. I agree with you on that, but the sofa is totally doable.
Still workable. Yeah. Okay. All right. I see it. I can see it working. I'm sure Nintendo will have some kind of tech up their sleeve to make sure that it is consistent and good, because they generally do. I don't think they go into this being there's going to be these situations, these use cases that we can't account for. They're going to try and account for all of them, right? They're going to try and account for every situation. So, yeah.
And like I said, this is specific parts of the game. There will be ways, it's only for specific boss fights, and you will not be sick of mouse controls by the end of this 3D Mario game.
Right.
That's the point. It's gonna stay fresh.
I think I couldn't see this being the gimmick of the whole game, because I was almost imagining
it won't be the gimmick of the whole game, I don't think, but it'll be a big factor for certain parts.
Yeah, what if you are a giant master hand through the whole game, and Mario, you're also controlling Mario, and one hand is a Joy-Con being the master hand doing stuff, so it's a solo co-op game of the hand is lifting things up in the background and Mario is jumping, and you're kind of co-oping your way through.
I think that's a great idea. I just think that'll be for phases within bosses and specific settings. It's never going to be the whole game.
So Handy is his name, right? His name's Handy, and
think of the pool stars on Mario Galaxy, with the blue ones.
Yeah, I mean, Bally, it writes itself. We've had Cappy. Now Mario's gloves become the anthropomorphized thing, and Handy is going to come and be your friend, and you use Handy in these moments, right?
Something like that.
So yeah,
it's happening.
Okay, I like it. I like where we got here with this, and. Yeah. Any thoughts on date for Mario 3D? Are we thinking October? Or are we thinking November?
I think the system will launch in July, and the new Mario game will be September, October.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's reasonable. Okay, great. My number 3 prediction. The first game officially announced for the NX before we knew what the Switch was called Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age S Definitive Edition. As such, Square Enix, knowing the pure dominance of Switch in Japan, will once again make a bet on Nintendo and will make Switch 2 the lead platform for the next in the series, Dragon Quest XII The Flames of Fate, which is the name. We know that. They've said that already. It was announced 3 years ago, in fact, so it was announced and we've not seen anything from it. Dragon Quest generally as a series always goes to the dominant platform, basically. I think Square Enix are now in this world where they have to multi-platform everything. So I don't think we live in the world of Dragon Quest anymore where it's like, it's only on the Nintendo DS because that's the most popular platform. I think Dragon Quest 12 will be on every platform, modern-wise, just because of the way that, you know, these days, everything's pretty similar, right? We no longer have weird Nintendo handhelds that are different. So there is enough like consistency between them that Dragon Quest can be across everything. But we will see gameplay and be given a 2026 release date. It will launch on both Switch and Switch 2 because, of course, Square Enix cannot give up the, I think, 40 million Switches in Japan. It's something crazy, like 40 million in Japan.
Feels like 1 in 5 Japanese people own a Switch or some stat. It's wild.
Mad. Yeah. So they can't give that up. Obviously, the biggest install base for Dragon Quest fans is going to be Switch. So it's going to be a Switch 1 game, but it also has to be a Switch 2 game. This game will be darker. And it will, in a way that the Like a Dragon series was like, we're going to take inspiration from classic Dragon Quest and we're going to go turn-based. The reverse will happen. We're going to see an inversion with Dragon Quest. And Dragon Quest 12 will have action combat. However, as tradition goes, and as everyone knows, Dragon Quest is a very traditional series, they won't chop the arm off yet. They will have 2 combat modes. We will have traditional and modern. The modern will be a more action style combat that has a little bit of selection stuff to it. Think along the lines of a 7 remake, kind of like a little bit of a blended. But you'll also have traditional, and you can choose to play the game in either of these modes. Dragon Quest obviously has done something similar to this before, but maybe from a visual standpoint, which is the 3DS version having the top-down Super Nintendo looking version.
So you can switch it up on the fly.
Yeah, so you can switch between traditional and modern combat.
And which one will MBZ play the majority of the game as?
And I, as a traditional Dragon Quest guy, will play the traditional for the most part. I will try the modern, and I'll probably not like it that much. But traditional, I think most Dragon Quest fans will do. Dragon Quest fans, as a result, will be slightly mad about this, but not fully mad because they can still play traditional Dragon Quest mode. But it will serve as a way to introduce new people to the series and get them into it, right? That. One of the characters will look suspiciously like Ichiban Kasuga from Like a Dragon, completing the full circle, and thus making it all make sense in the end. So,
I like this prediction a lot, and yeah, Dragon Quest 12 seems quite likely very soon, right?
I think that one of the rumors going for the Xbox presentation that we just saw was there's a big decades-long Japanese franchise that's going to get a new entry, and people were speculating about it, and people were saying Persona. My thought on that was it was going to be Dragon Quest, and I was like, oh, maybe Xbox get Dragon Quest. And it ended up being Ninja Gaiden, so it wasn't any of those. But the thing that kind of took me off that, like, rocker was like, no, Nintendo and Dragon Quest are kind of like hand in hand these days. Like, I think as the dominant Japanese platform, despite Japan not being like obviously the biggest market, it is still, I think, for Dragon Quest, the one where it sells the best, and therefore decisions about where Dragon Quest gets put are always Japanese led, which means that I think any place that we see Dragon Quest 12, the most likely is going to be in that April presentation, because it's like a big tentpole franchise. Even if it isn't coming this year, I think Square would like to have a presence at that Nintendo presentation and be like, we're supporting the Switch 2. You know, they've had a lot of failure recently with Rebirth not selling enough, and I think they are changing their tune of like, we've got to be across every platform with all these games. And so I think they will show up to that presentation. They will have Rebirth, or they'll have Remake for Switch 2 there, but they'll have a new thing as well, because they have to talk about the future, they have to talk about new games. And it's been 3 years. It's been 3 years since 12 was announced, and we have seen nothing of it. So it feels like it's time, basically, to announce the next Dragon Quest, properly give it a full reveal, even if it's not gameplay, even if it's like a cinematic thing, at least give us the context of the world and the characters so that we can get ready for a probably 2026 release date, is my guess. So
cool. I like it.
I would very much like that to happen.
It
would be the first Dragon Quest that Bally might play, potentially. Yeah. So, yeah, that'd be good. Right, your fourth prediction, Bally.
Right, there's the last serious one. Well, my fifth one, we'll get there, but
yeah.
Okay. So there was lots of leaks for the Switch 2 and there was a button which had a C on it. But then when Nintendo officially showed off the Switch 2, the button no longer had a C on it, implying that Nintendo are hiding something that they will reveal in April, because there is in fact a C on that C button, and the C on the Switch 2 controller stands for community. And the button will give you access to a thing, think Street Pass crossed with Miiverse. You can talk about games on boards, but also play mini games together to collect puzzle pieces or some other Nintendo collectible, a bit like Badge Arcade. Like it'll link to the how you can decorate your Switch 2 on the operating system when you boot it up and that kind of thing. While there won't strictly be functionality that's like Street Pass, there will be stuff that you can only uniquely do in person with another Switch 2 owner. So just like Pokemon Mystery Gift, it's kind of like you have to be there together. This whole thing is a little bit like PlayStation Home, but with a heavy injection of Nintendo energy, and it launches day one of the Switch 2, and you must have Nintendo Online base whatever to use it.
Yeah. Interesting.
And so think of all the mini games you're playing in like Street Pass. It's that, but you're playing with friends. And then separate to that, there are spaces where you can go and communicate and share screenshots. How do I say screenshots today? Screenshots and videos of games you've been playing, all within a Nintendo ecosystem, so Nintendo never has to touch a social media platform again.
Right. I like this a lot. I can almost imagine it as a hub you walk around and you like play gacha machines, and inside the gacha machines are like badges, right?
Yes.
Like that sort of thing where you're exploring, and maybe it's almost like the Splatoon Plaza, but like for everything.
Yes.
You know? Which I think is a cool idea, just generally.
And Badge Arcade was awesome. Like getting all those badges and putting them in, and yeah.
It was just like, it led to the customization stuff, right? And like Nintendo fully lent into customization on 3DS, and they had themes you could buy, they had all that stuff. Like it was the most customizable Nintendo system of all time from a software standpoint. And I really feel like they are leaving money on the table, not letting people do that and customize their Switch experience, especially because I think Switch as a fashion statement is kind of a thing, you know, like there's a style to the Switch as a device. There's a decision of people of what Joy-Cons you have. People customize their Joy-Cons from like a modding perspective as well. I think Switch 2 is a bit plainer from a just pure aesthetic standpoint. And so how do you make up for that? You have to like have a software side of it that is a bit more snazzy, a bit more customizable. So.
And like I think there was logic to why the Switch was so plain. It was to try and keep that eShop and the OS just as smooth as possible. And the eShop slowed down after a few years, but when it first started, it was very smooth and functional, and the operating system of Nintendo Switch is still functional. But now that the Switch 2 has the extra power, that's when they can really play with this stuff. Think of the jump between the DS to the 3DS. Like the power jump meant that while the DS had hardly any customizable options, the 3DS, you could do Badge Arcade, Street Pass, all this extra stuff to customize your 3DS in the same way that I think Switch to Switch 2 will have. And they had great ideas with Street Pass, great ideas with Miiverse. This is the evolution of those ideas. And this plays on like some of the leaks that came out with that online test that they did.
Right.
Like this is all linked to that entirely.
Interesting. You know something that would be very cool as well? Imagine if for Street Pass you didn't have to take your entire Switch with you. You could just pop a Joy-Con in your pocket, and it acted as like,
I love that.
You know, a little kind of like way to collect things. Because obviously everyone remembers
the same way you could store your Miis in a Wiimote and bring the Wiimote to a friend's house.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Bally. I was literally about to say that. So yes, exactly in the same way you did that, you could have your Joy-Con.
See, that's the little Nintendo nuggets us Nintendo hardcore know about. You know,
exactly,
we remember these things.
Yeah, so like that's what I would imagine is like you have the Joy-Con in your pocket instead, so you're not carrying around the full thing. And when you get home, you dock your Joy-Con into your Switch, and it's like all the Miis jump out of it. It's like they all fall out of it in a fun
animation.
way.
Yeah. And even if this doesn't happen, I need something like this with this energy to happen. And you know, like everybody votes channel, just community, interactive, daily stuff, like things you are doing on the console on a daily basis that aren't just the standard software.
Playing video games. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Playing video games. I want the other mini games and the fun, silly things to do.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. I hope it comes true. And yeah, I think it will tie into this weird MMO thing that they were testing, for sure.
And another way to sell Switch Online, of course.
Of course, yes. That is that's the modus operandi. It's like they want subscription money and they need reasons for people to keep paying them. So yeah, it makes sense. All right, I've got 2 left, and they're both maybe goofy. So I don't know which one to do. I think I'm gonna go with my game one as my more regular, and then the other one I can leave as a weird one. Okay, so Nintendo. So it's my 4th prediction. Nintendo are once again reviving an old IP, but this time it is to use a gimmick. Now, we've talked a lot about the mouse, of course, and I think that is definitely going to be a thing. But also, there's still options here to use rhythm. Not rhythm. I've spoiled my prediction. There's still options here to use motion control as well. There's lots of input devices for this stuff. We will see the return of Takamaru's Ninja Castle, of course, well known from Nintendo Land.
Yes,
but of course from the original Famicom game as well that never released here. The Zelda-style kind of top-down action game. It will be a full 3D ninja game, but there is a twist. This will be Punch-Out mixed with a rhythm game where you walk down corridors fighting enemies and then come up against bosses. And you will use twin katanas, which will be the Joy-Cons that you hold in your hand. So it's a bit of arms in here. It's a bit of like Punch-Out and it's rhythm, but it's using this IP. You're this samurai going through a castle and you have your katanas and you're slicing and dicing enemies. And you can use 4 different control schemes. Number 1, you can use 2 Joy-Cons with motion control together in 2 different hands. Number 2, you can use 2 Joy-Cons as mouse controls together at the same time. You can also, in handheld mode, use both analog sticks for this. And the 4th and final, you can use the touchscreen for this. So it basically is using sword slashing. There's a bit of Skyward Sword energy here, mixed with a little bit of Punch-Out, and you are automatically moving forward. It's basically like a kind of rhythm game where you're moving forward and you're kind of slicing on the beat and you're killing people, but it uses every single possible use of the Switch 2 in terms of control input method. So there you go.
I love it.
You can see why that could be the out there one, the weird one, because I think
that's
it's
kind of out there. I'm not putting my house on it, but
no,
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I do like the idea of like bringing back old IP, because they have been doing a lot in the dying era of Switch, where we see fucking Another Code come back, for example,
Advance
which is like
Wars remake.
Yes. Endless Ocean, they made another one, right? Like there's oh god, what happened to that? It really flopped critically. Which was a shame. Did not do well at all. So like, yes, they are not above bringing back really deep cuts. I think the problem is that to bring back a deep cut that old, you really have to have a lot of work done. You have to, it's Sakurai doing Kid Icarus. Like, you have to have someone with a real vision behind it to bring it to a modern platform, modern era. So I don't know if anyone at all at Nintendo still cares about Takamaru's Ninja Castle, but if someone does, then I can see them doing a modern take on it. Maybe it isn't exactly as I've described in the weird kind of rhythm Punch-Out, but maybe it's something that is cool that also uses swords and ninjas. So yeah, I'd like to see it happen in any case. So
cool. Yeah.
There you go.
MBZ.
Yeah.
When is the Zelda film coming out?
It's a great question. 2027 is my guess.
Well, they are going to reveal the cast.
Oh boy, here we go.
Live action Zelda film.
Oh no.
This year. There will be a Nintendo Direct once the Switch 2 is launched. It's going to be way after that. It's going to be like October, November time. It's going to be really random, and they will say, but in bold in the post on Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever, they're going to say, then there will be no Nintendo Switch 2 games announced in this Direct, and it's going to be Miyamoto. He's going to say, hi, I've been working with, I can't remember who the studio are working on.
I don't remember either.
Well, I've been working with them, and the dude from the other company will come on and say, hi, I've been working with Miyamoto.
And they'll say, Miyamoto-san, my best friend.
And they'll say, we're really pleased to announce the cast of the Zelda movie. And then Miyamoto will get out his Link sword and shield and look very happy in that way he always looks when he's holding a Link sword and shield. And so bear in mind, I know nothing about films. My knowledge
Bally
of
doesn't know any actors at all.
My
Yeah.
knowledge of actors is pretty limited. But with the Mario film, some of those names I had heard of before because they go for really mainstream names.
Very well-known people.
To attract as wide an audience as possible. So everyone should have heard of these actors I'm going to name. Okay, so let's start with Link. Link will be played by none other than Nathan Drake, Tom Holland.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I can see it.
Ganondorf will be played by none other than Knuckles, Idris Elba.
Ooh, I like it. That's a good Ganondorf pick. I can see that.
And we mentioned the Hunger Games earlier.
Yes.
Zelda will be played by Jennifer Lawrence.
Okay, all right. Interesting choice.
Chris Pratt will also be in the film.
Okay, but who's he playing?
And he will play a random Zora.
Okay, great. Like a little bit of cameo basically
Yeah.
in there. Yeah.
There we go. That's my prediction.
That's it. Okay, great. So the three leads and then Chris Pratt's also going to be there.
The Triforce and Chris Pratt. That's all you need.
To be fair, I wouldn't want you to push your bounds of like actor knowledge here, Bally. I think that's totally cool. I think that works fine. I think I can see Tom Holland. I can also see like the boy of the moment, Timothée Chalamet, being Link as well.
Oh yes, that's a great shout for Link.
I think either one of those
he seems
two.
really tall for Link though.
I think when I look at him though, if you put elf ears on that man, I think that works, Like make him blonde and put elf ears on him and I could see him. We've been catching up on The Boys recently and Amazon for some fucking reason. So you have these tiered things on subscription
You've got
services
ads now.
You've got ads on fucking Prime, and I'm like, this is the stupidest shit in the world. Anyway, the only ad that they keep playing is for the fucking Bob Dylan movie, which I didn't know about until
and he's
now.
playing Bob Dylan.
He's playing Bob Dylan in that. So anyway, he's fucking everywhere. He was in Dune.
Bob Dylan is Link.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I can see him being the hotter pick for Link potentially.
Sure.
But I can see Tom Holland as well. That the video game Link there with Nathan Drake. So I think this. I think the Idris Elba one is spot on. That's the one that I'm like, I can 100% see that happening. Makes a lot of sense. Jennifer Lawrence, I don't know for Zelda. Feels like maybe
I don't know actors.
outside the age range.
I agree. That's the one I'm least confident on.
Yeah, but it could be an interesting take. I think it could be an interesting take. So, I don't know when we're going to hear anything about this. Honestly,
here's a question though.
Yeah.
Do high-profile actors get scared by live action, and the realistic names of who these people are going to be is going to be a lot lower profile because they don't. It's not a faceless sound studio this time. It's you're wearing the Link hat. You've got the Master Sword in your hand. There's no getting away from you are Link now. It's not. Chris Pratt can kind of hide behind being Mario. He's not live action. So I don't know. That makes me skeptical. It's going to be high profile actors, but
they could cast unknowns instead, which might help with the imagination of it, right? Like you're not looking at it thinking that's an actor. Instead, you're thinking that's a character, right? Which can help. And certainly it was interesting. Like when the new Star Wars films were coming out, they were all like casting unknowns for those roles, and I think that helped with the universe and all that sort of stuff. So it's definitely a benefit to it. So yeah, we'll see. I don't know when this is coming out. Film timelines and stuff confuse me. I never know how long it takes to make a film.
Will it actually happen? Because it's kind of wild to even think about that there's a live action Zelda film coming.
They've officially announced it. They're we're doing it. So I think it is gonna happen.
It's just things like this get cancelled a lot. That's all.
That's true. But it's very true. Brandon Sanderson recently, because last couple of years he's like, oh, Mistborn film has come and he's super close, and then he gets to this end phase and then it just falls through, and now it's back to phase one again. It's like, okay,
the producers keep throwing Chris Chalamet, Timothée Chalamet in my face, and I don't want him as the main.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's disagreements that can happen creatively on that stuff. And there's so many processes to go through to make a film that all these things get. Like the Uncharted film. When the Uncharted film was first announced, Mark Wahlberg was picked to play Nathan Drake. Yeah. It took so long for the film to get made that they cast him as Sully instead, because that's how old he had gotten by that point. So.
What was Miyamoto's first choice for Mario? Chris Pratt.
I'm not sure that Miyamoto knows actors, just like you do,
If Miyamoto can do it, so can I. It's easy.
Yeah, exactly. So
easy
I think I'm very curious when that happens, and you know it's going to be the same thing. We'll be in the random middle of a direct, and Miyamoto will pop up and be like, "Hi, I'm going to tell you about my new friends. These actors, they're all playing people in the Zelda film."
I'm Tom Holland, and I've played every Zelda.
Yeah, He's like, I went to the arcade and put the coin in. Loved it. It was my favorite.
I'm Idris Elba, and I've always wanted to play Ganondorf.
You know who needs to be in more video game movies is fucking Henry Cavill, because he actually does care.
He is, he is in a Warhammer 40,000 movie, apparently.
Yeah,
That's
which is
amazing.
like exactly his shit. So, that would be very good. But I don't know. What I want to know is like, what's the equivalent of who's playing Toad in the Legend of Zelda movie? Because like when they were like going down the list of Mario, oh my god, you're so right. Fuck, dude, they're gonna. Oh my god.
Or the Tingle equivalent, depending what game. Like we've just had Stamp Guy,
Right,
so.
right. Oh, it's gonna be Tingle. It's always Tingle, right? He's like the iconic weirdo. So, man, you're right. It's gonna be someone who's playing Tingle.
Who is Tingle? It will be.
I don't think I have any kind of thoughts in my head about who that could be, but I'm sure people on the internet will have written those up. There's loads of people out there who have done fan casting for this stuff, and I'm sure there's lots of good Tingles. So yeah. Okay, great. I like that. Very good. Fun final prediction. My final prediction. So we got the second USB-C at the top, all right? And people are like, okay, what is that for? Everyone's like, well, you can charge it. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. You can charge it. Yeah, that's fucking boring. Okay, right?
It's boring.
We don't do that shit, right? So, first of all, you can charge it. Second of all, you can use a wire to attach it to your TV through a wire. So if you're at a hotel and you don't bring your dock, you can HDMI to USB-C and you can put it on the TV. All nice and normal. Great.
That's good.
However, we need to see the return of Nintendo with weird fucking peripherals that you stick into your device. The Wii, the N64, we got all this shit. So there are many things we could do. We could, for example, if we wanted, we could put a camera there, for online video chat. Front-facing camera, back-facing camera. You just plug in the USB-C at the top. It's a camera attachment. Also, who needs a headset? Why not bring back We Speak and USB-C, a We Speak microphone open to the air that anyone can listen to, that you could also plug into the top of that.
That works seamlessly with Community.
Seamlessly, of course. And, the most important thing of all for Nintendo is backwards compatibility, DS games are fine on the current Switch or, the way that they've set them up. They could do that with, like, a small window and all that sort of stuff. Castlevania Dominus Collection managed to do it.
I love this idea.
But what better than another screen? So, of course, to play DS games, you can take a second screen and USB-C plug it into the top of the Nintendo Switch to give you DS functionality.
You see, I thought you were going to say you can plug in a little doohickey that you can actually put DS games into, and Nintendo, from a first-party perspective, put the axe right through all of these companies making these add-ons that allow you to play like Game Boy games, DS games, whatever.
Got you, yeah.
They're like, right, we're taking the reins on this pirate shit. We are.
I see.
Anyway, I love the dual screen idea.
Just attaching another screen to the top of this screen.
What do you think the chances are that in April Nintendo reveal Wii U functionality? And by that I mean you can have your TV running at the same time through the dock as the screen on the Switch 2.
I think there's a possibility. I do think that there's a reason for that top USB-C. And yes, I'm goofing on it here, but there has to be a reason other than charging, because why would you give it two USB-C slots, right? Like, Nintendo are very deliberate with what they put.
People have said, like, oh, it's future-proofing. It's like, no, it needs to be more specific than that. Nintendo don't future-proof. Like,
they don't just do things like that for no good reason. And they did point it out in the reveal video. Like, they hovered over it and it appeared, and they hovered over the bottom one and it also appeared. And so they want us to know it has two USB-C slots. And like any other device, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's just for two different devices that plug in, like a computer, right? And just Nintendo don't do that, They don't do that. They don't just put an extra USB-C for no reason. So I think there has to be a reason. And I do think there's a possibility of there's a cable that you can use to connect it up to a TV, and it basically casts two different images across both of them, right? I think it's possible. I do think it is possible.
I just need that Nintendo Land port / Nintendo Land 2.
I was very close to predicting Nintendo Land 2 as one of my predictions, because I do think that could be a possibility. Obviously, Four Swords, right? The GameCube Four Swords would be a great thing for this as well. If there's a way for them to do it wirelessly, like, great. Like, if there's a thing in the dock, like you're thinking of, like, does the dock have a thing that you can basically? It's the reverse Wii U technology, right? Where the Wii U was casting from the box to the tablet controller, right, to the gamepad. Is it a situation where you are now casting from the hardware, the physical Switch 2, to the dock?
Yes.
And there's enough power in that to mirror it on the screen, essentially, right?
Right.
Because I think that would be the way to do it, and that would also be much more convenient than having a bunch of stuff wired up.
Definitely possible.
It'd be a pain. But
cool.
Yeah.
I'm pleased with those predictions.
Yeah, I think so. I think we went a bit weird, a bit out there, but also there's some grounded stuff in there.
Stuff in there that I think
could
will
happen.
It will happen.
But yeah, it's an exciting time. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff to be thinking about and discovering. But yeah, those are our 5 predictions each for the year. Bally, we did get an email that goes over some predictions as well. So do you want to bring that up?
We have an email from Brett M, who is from the United States, and says, "Hello, Mrs. and Bally." We should also say this email came in before the reveal of the Switch 2, so there's a little bit of things to think about. With the Switch 2, I believe that Nintendo will be trying to recapture the youth that has largely switched to tablet gaming. In order to do this, I'm predicting that the following will happen. Why don't we react to each prediction as it goes? Number 1, despite the leaks, the Switch 2 will actually be called the Switch Tab and look more like a tablet. This will be built with a touchscreen and the primary source of controls. The Switch Tab will be priced at $399 with controllers / Joy-Con being an optional add-on you can buy separately. Well, this wasn't the case, but that's an okay idea, but they've really stuck with the original hardware form.
Definitely played it safe here. I think $399 is the right price. We didn't talk about price and predictions, but I think $399 US, but I think also as British people, we're going to get fucked over. It's going to be $399 sterling. So, yeah.
I think there's a chance it might be $450 US and $400 UK because of the Trump tariffs.
Oh, the tariff shit, yeah.
Number 2, Nintendo will come out with Super Mario Maker 3D, a Super Mario Maker with assets from the 3D Mario games and will largely play like Minecraft. I think 3D Mario Maker is very hard to nail down.
Not if you have a mouse, it's not.
Not if you have a mouse. I think I'd be surprised if the Maker format ever goes 3D, but I wouldn't put anything past Nintendo.
Yeah, I think it's possible. It's definitely a lot more difficult to do. But if they were to do it, they obviously do have the mouse stuff now. I think that makes things a lot easier. Any kind of Mario Maker stuff is going to be made easier by that functionality just inherently. So I think there's a possibility that we do see a new Mario Maker. I think Nintendo have done a terrible job of supporting Mario Maker as a franchise generally on an individual game basis. Like Mario Maker 2 was a bit of an embarrassment, I'll be honest. Like I just really think they fucked it up badly in a lot of different ways, but like the support on it was awful. So yeah, I don't know that I'd be as into a new Mario Maker because it feels like they just have not been good shepherds of that as a franchise in its own right, which is a shame. But yeah.
Number 3, Nintendo will launch Nintendo Now, a streaming service which, much like Nintendo Music, will launch with very little content and only include the Mario movie, previous Nintendo Directs, and trailers for games that are already out. An Animal Crossing kids TV show will be teased with no release date given. Here's hoping this doesn't happen, and happy gaming to the entire TNL community in 2025.
I like that a lot because of how stupid and Nintendo it is. Like a video service where you can watch Nintendo Directs that are readily available on YouTube. Like, yeah, of course they would do that. I think those Pikmin shorts would go on there as well. Miyamoto's Pikmin shorts. You know what I'd love is I'd love to take some stuff from like the Nintendo channel that they used to have. That had a bunch of stuff on it, like archived old video stuff would be really nice. Yeah, I think like if Nintendo are serious about building out more multimedia stuff, they could certainly get a few different things on there. And I don't know, I feel like an Animal Crossing animated show would. I feel like there must have been one that exists in Japan. Honestly, a lot of these already do exist out there. You know, like There's the Phoenix Wright movie, the live action one that exists. There's lots of stuff like that in Japan.
F-Zero anime, I want to say.
There's an F-Zero anime, I believe. Yeah, exactly. So
I do think as Nintendo grows their media empire, this will happen at some point. I don't think they're there yet, and that's why they're so closely tied to, Universal and other things, and they probably do all these deals through that. But something video related that shows what they do at some point will happen. I don't think Switch 2 will be it, but we'll see.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, I think that is going to do us for the predictions part of the show, which takes us, Bally, to our game trade for 2025. So every year, as we said at the beginning, Bally and I give each other a game that we have to play in 2025 or in the year following. The rules are it has to be on a Nintendo system.
The current rules.
Current rules, yes.
And we have to. We don't have to beat it, but we do have to give it a good, honourable try.
Yes, absolutely. And for the most part, we finish these games.
We've finished every game barring me and Sonic Mania.
Yes, I think so. I think that's the case. So we'll, sometimes it goes well, such as Bally giving me Metro Prime and, me enjoying that game. Sometimes it goes badly, such as Bally giving me Untitled Goose Game, and as you saw me not loving that game. It's a bit of luck of the draw, but it's also a fun thing to do. And I think the nice thing about it is it forces someone to play something that they might not have just made time for of their own accord.
Out of their comfort zone.
Exactly, potentially. So, Bally, do you want to go first and give me your game?
I'll give you my game. We discovered or realized that I really like loopy games with an ending when we were discussing our Go TT to Coty last episode. And there was one game on that list that you hadn't played that I think you will really like. I think this is probably on your lists, but we'll make sure you get to it this year. And that game is Cult of the Lamb. It is time for you to play Cult of the Lamb. I think you will really, really enjoy it.
That's good. I was wanting to play it eventually. It's one of those that is perpetually, like, when it goes on sale, I'm like, it could be cheaper, Like, I'm just always sitting there being like, oh, I'll get it eventually, but it never, like, hits that threshold, so...
Also, the list of games I'm picking from is very thin, so, like, we might need to change these rules next year. Otherwise, I'll try and play lots of games you've not played this year, and I can maybe pick one of those, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, that's definitely tricky. Or you change the rules to be like, you give me a game that you actually haven't played, but it's just a game, Like that's another potential avenue if we wanted to go down that. But
slightly less interesting, maybe.
Yeah, I think the whole point of it is like to have something that we've
experienced and want to share. Yes,
exactly. That's kind of the ethos behind it. So
I have no idea what you're going to pick for me. I'm always a bit scared when this happens.
I have not had much thoughts about it. There's one that I had in the back of my pocket for a while. The problem, Bally, for a lot of these is most of the games that I would like you to play are 90-hour JRPGs, and the issue is that I know your time is limited, and you really only have time for a couple of those a year, which means I want to let you have your own freedom to choose which ones those are when you come to be like, I want to play Witcher 3, and you're like, okay, this will take me 100 hours, but I wanted to do this,
Witcher 3 is my current 100-hour project, and I'm 20 hours in, and I'm enjoying that, but yeah.
So I need to wait for you to have a window where you don't have an intended 100-hour game to play in a year, and then I can give you a 100-hour game to play, which would make things a bit easier. But there is a game that I think you have been wanting to play, and I don't know that you would play it of your natural, like, I'm going to pick this up and do it, just because of, new things coming out and all that sort of stuff, and it's an older game to go back to, and it also is relevant to this year, because I think we are going to get another game in the series coming out this year.
Oh, wow, okay, right.
And also...
it's a loopy game with an ending?
No, unfortunately. Also, there's a recent podcast episode that you probably wouldn't have been able to listen to because it involved this game. So I'm giving you, Bally, the first, Professor Layton and the Curious Village.
Wow. Okay. So, yes.
You do have access to this through Steam Deck. I put it on there for you.
Excellent.
RFN recently did their retroactive on Professor Layton and the Curious Village. And
this is the first one?
This is the first game in the series, yes.
Great.
This is the game that you have always been like, I should play that one day.
Yes.
But I don't know if you would, so I think it's a good one for you to check out.
Exciting. Yeah. Oh, I'm pumped. This is a good pick. I'm happy. I've got my Steam Deck. It's on there. You future-proofed yourself.
Yeah, I did. I definitely did. for sure.
I'm excited. Yeah.
So
how long is
yeah,
that game? Do you think?
I want to say under 10 hours, maybe around that amount. But yeah, it's very interesting for sure. And has I don't know how well it's aged. I think listening to RFN episode maybe not as amazingly as you might have hoped, but I think it's still...
We're talking like early 2000s, right?
It's a DS game, right? It's an early DS game, so it's definitely it's going to have some quirks here and there. But I first played it, I want to say around 2010-ish, and really did enjoy it. I had a really good time with it, and I have subsequently played the 3DS games, basically. So 1, 2, and 3 on DS. There's a fourth game that also came out on DS, and then 5 and 6 were both 3DS games. And the second trilogy is a prequel trilogy, basically. So the first 3 games are, the most up to date. Right. And of course, we have the new World of Steam coming out this year, the new Professor Layton game. So
exciting. I will beat it before that comes out, if that comes out this year.
Yeah, that would be a good thing to do for sure.
Awesome.
So yeah,
great picks.
I think we've got some good stuff to check out for this year. Exciting times. Yeah, I think that's going to do us. Obviously, if you would like to write into the show with emails, because we're going to be kicking back into regular stuff, now that we've got all of our Game of the Year prediction stuff out of the way, we're back into normal episodes, which means we'll probably be taking some more of your emails. Bally, where can they send those emails to?
Please email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Please do let us know anything about the future. Thoughts on Switch 2, things like that. That'd be good.
It's this big build up to April now. That's what we're all thinking about.
Absolutely, yeah. It's going to be a big year. Big year. Obviously, new console coming out, new games, loads of fun announcements. Very much looking forward to it. And you can follow it and all the fun by subscribing to this show. You can do on Spotify and on Stitcher and all those places. Just search for This Nintendo Life. You'll find us. It's great. Fantastic. You can also find us over on social media in various places. You can find me at NBZ, actually. No Lord NBZ anymore. I'm on Blue Sky at NBZ, so just find me there.
You've got NBZ. That's awesome.
I've got NBZ, yeah.
You are NBZ.
Yeah. I am NBZ, so I did it. Finally. So you can find me there. Bally, where can they find you?
You can also find me on Blue Sky at Ballyman91, and I'm also there on X, but you don't have to follow me on there anymore.
The everything app.
I'm giving up. I think I'm giving up. See, I don't give up on my British politics feed, because that's where everyone still is, but in terms of gaming it feels very done.
Yeah, very much so. Which means you can also find TNL Podcast on Blue Sky as well, so go follow us there. The account is up now, so go give us a follow, and we'll just be announcing stuff, all the episode releases and all that stuff there as well, so check it out. You can, of course, also support the show by going to patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, where you can get bonus episodes such as our predictions for Nintendo that will be happening in February. So go over there and support us. Bally, we'd like to thank some of our patrons.
Yes, thank you to our $10 tier plus patrons. They are Zach S, Thomas, Matthew, Albert, Wicked Gamer UK Alan, Turtle, Orange Thunder, and Ali T. But thank you also to all of our other patrons. And yeah, in the month of January, we did our top 5 Nintendo games of 2024. That was a fun one to record.
Yeah, so you can go check that out and see. And all of our lists are now up as well. So if you head over to our Discord, which is where lots of people are chatting, there should be a link there, a pinned link to our GG page, where you can scroll through and see all of the lists for the last 11 years, basically.
Wow.
Which is
well done updating that, because it's a nice database to have.
It is. It's really good fun having that there. You can go and see, what was Bally's Goatee to Coatee number 6 for the year 2016, Who knows? But you can go find out for yourself. And that's a nice chronicle of everything that we have liked over the years, which is very good. Lovely. I think that is going to do us. Thank you, everybody, for listening. How many shows have we got until we find out the April stuff, Bally?
Oh, God.
I think probably
so
4 or 5.
Yeah, 4 or 5. Not many. Not many.
So not too long.
Citizen Sleeper 2 is in the pipeline. Hopefully
yeah, that's
play
a big one
for
coming
next
out.
time. And then I guess March is Split Fiction. Fiction. Split, is that what it's called?
Split Fiction. That's correct.
We're looking forward to playing that, and then. I'm not personally into all the games coming out in February. Are you got your eyes on things?
Not necessarily, no. I managed to get a free code of Assassin's Creed Shadows, so
okay.
I will be playing that whenever it releases, but I think that's in like March at some point.
Right, okay.
But yeah, aside from that, there's not really anything that's piqued my interest. I guess I did play Lonely Mountain Snow Riders today, which is very good, and I know that you'll be interested in checking that out. It's on Game Pass as well, so yeah, it's a good little game. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be bouncing around stuff. I started Cyberpunk 2077 last weekend, so I'm 4 hours into that. So I will be.
We might have to have a CG Project Red Nintendo episode.
I think we will. Yeah, that'll be
3.
good. Yeah, Cyberpunk and Witcher 3. So it'll be good chat. So yeah, lots of stuff to come up. Of course, April's the big day. We'll be counting down until we get there. But until then, we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with more of this nonsense. Thanks all for listening. And see you soon. Bye bye. The musical interlude used on today's show was Climactic Return from Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. Copyright Spike Chunsoft 2010.